Welcome back to the channel. Today we will travel through the pages of What If Deku gained powers to change his fate final. The link to the story will be in the description below, and if you want an update of the current series, join the Discord. Now let's start. Chapter 40. Izuku didn't want to admit that the 2 days spent recovering for their return to the palace had mounted his anxiety. He paid a visit to Takemi and did his best with the funds he had left. She showed concern again, Izuku failing to hide his agitation. But the best he could do was dismiss it, appreciative but focused on his primary objective. And after a late-night text from Bakugo and Makoto, confirming both were ready, Izuku went to bed restless. One last push. One last push to find the treasure on the final floor. He parroted, trying to steady his mind and get rid of his restlessness. He tried not to look in a rush down the stairs, not wanting to draw Sajiro's "get out. I'm not serving you." Izuku raised his head in alarm, trotting down the steps quickly when he heard the disdain of his guardian's voice. He slowed to a stop when he saw who he was addressing. "That's a rather rude welcome. We're here as customers." It was Sei who answered Sajiro's bitter response, but she wasn't the source of his ire. Standing just a short ways away from her, Izuku's chest tightening up, was the young hero they had met some time ago. Lemillion. The young hero in training who let Eri go. Izuku briefly met his eyes, the older teen looking at him ruefully. He quickly looked away in shame, his head hanging low. Izuku didn't feel it was unjust for him to feel so. The things he heard and saw in the palace made his stance on the matter firm. It's alright, Sei-san. I think it's better if I leave, Lemillion told her, backing away toward the door. Sei furrowed her brow, watching Lemillion slowly turn around and make his exit. "Izu. Might I have a moment?" Sei asked, her eyes trailing to Izuku. The green-haired teen felt like he was suddenly on the spot but was unable to reject his once older sister figure. Sure. Sei stepped outside, Izuku trailing behind her tentatively. He looked around for the young hero, but he seemed to make himself scarce. "Mind telling me what's going on?" It's complicated," Izuku mumbled, not sure where to start and how much to divulge. "How do you know him, Sei-san?" "He's an associate from work. I've worked with him on several cases. He's surprisingly capable for someone as upbeat as he is. Though he clearly hasn't been that way as of late. And apparently it has something to do with you and your guardian." Sei crossed her arms over her chest, Izuku feeling her eyes drilling into him. "I won't pry, but I thought I'd see if you want to tell me about it." Izuku wrung his hands, unsure what exactly to say, and thought it was best to remain silent and shake his head. "No, Sei-san. We're okay." Sei remained silent, Izuku having trouble meeting her eyes still. He was afraid she might see through him much like she did during his childhood when he, Makoto and Bakugo would get up to some mischief together. He was always the target of her glare because he was the worst at hiding the truth. But thankfully, she relented, a sigh escaping her lips. "If you say so, I can't say I'll always be able to lend a voice to talk to you. I'm quite busy and barely have time as it is." Sei's words were as honest as they were a bit harsh. But the small shift in her tone was evident. "But if I can lend an ear, just know I'm willing to listen. Don't be afraid to ask." Izuku was surprised by her words, but also delighted. It felt like the Sei of old who would both scold but also take care of their troublesome trio was standing in front of him and not the stern and cold lawyer that Makoto had described her to have become. I appreciate that, Sei-san. Of course. Now, I should take my leave. I was only stopping in for lunch with Tagata, but clearly that went a little off the intended plan." Sei pulled her sleeve down to check the time on her watch. "Are you off to see Makoto?" "Why yes, we were planning to study together with friends." Izuku quickly excused, remembering what the younger Najima had told him before about her excuses to Sei. "I see. It's good to know you're remaining diligent with her. She did always enjoy it when you were pushing her further." Sei smiled, hand resting on her purse strap. "Then I'll get out of your hair. I hope to see you around, Izu." "You as well, Sei-san. And please feel free to come back." Izuku bowed out of habit, like he was making an apology. "I plan to, but hopefully with a bit better reception to my company." She smirked before turning around. Izuku watched her leave, feeling the small tension in his shoulders lift. Morgana popped out of his bag, the cat looking a little concerned. "Hey, I hope you're okay after seeing that guy again. We need you focused on the mission as our leader, after all." Morgana said, his voice more gentle than usual. "Don't worry, Morgana-san. I am," he answered, looking back at the cat with his brow furrowed. "In fact, I'm just more motivated. Be ready for anything." Izuku warned his team, hands tentatively gripping his bow staff. The seven rode the elevator down, heading to the final floor that had yet to be explored. "Try not to lose your head, nerd." Bakugo's gruff warning drew Izuku's attention, the explosive teen watching him from the side. "If you're gonna lead, we don't need you riled up." Izuku's lips thinned into a line, looking around at his team. The others remained silent, their expressions conveying their own concern for his state. Right, sorry. I'll be more collected from here. Izuku sighed before looking back at Bakugo and smiling. Thank you, Kak Nitro. Whatever. Bakugo looked away. Ding, the thieves quickly shifted their focus forward, hands on their weapons, as they waited for the doors to slide open. They were met with a long wide hallway, much like the cleanrooms that belonged to Chisaki before. They slowly walked out, their guards still up despite the lack of shadows compared to the last floor. The doors mirrored the layout, only made obvious by the outlines of the frame and the plaques plated next to them. What was this floor labeled as again? Anne asked, rubbing her arm as she trailed next to Ryuji and Yusuke. There wasn't a map of this floor that I saw. I don't know how big it is either, Morgana mumbled, looking around the halls tentatively. But I can sense the treasure nearby. Do you know which direction? Makoto asked. Straight ahead. But judging from what I can see at the end of the hall, I doubt it'll be that simple, Morgana pointed with his paw, and the other thieves quickly understood. They jogged over to the end of the hall to more closely inspect the door blocking their way. It was large and made of steel, most likely, meant to keep out prying eyes. It's not a surprise that the treasure is protected this heavily. But look, another console. Izuku pointed out. We'll probably have to find the officers on this floor. We've already taken out 7 of those assholes, so there should only be 1 left from the bullets. Bakugo pointed out, eyes narrowed. 1, huh? Piece of cake. Maybe we'll run into that asshole ruler while we're at it and kick his ass too. Ryuji grinned in anticipation. I wouldn't treat that idea too lightly. We are all aware of just how dangerous the palace owner's true world abilities are. I do not wish to imagine what his shadow is capable of as well. Yusuke pointed out, grimacing at the prospect. Huh? The hell does that mean? Bakugo cocked a brow, looking at Fox. Like you saw with the cognitions, the abilities of those from the real world gets exaggerated. Unfortunately, this seems to mean the same goes doubly for the ruler, as well as give them abilities they aren't capable of in real life either. Makoto explained. She's right. Not to mention this is the first palace ruler that's a dangerous criminal with a more than lethal quirk. We have to avoid them at all costs. Izuku frowned, hiding his frustration. Part of him wanted to personally bring Chisaki down, to make him pay for what pain Eri is clearly going through. But not at the possible cost of his team's safety. He'll get his justice soon enough. TCH, what a waste. We should be burying him ourselves. For once, part of Izuku agreed with Bakugo's violent tendency, though of course not to the same severity. Let's check each of these offices. Hopefully one will have the keycard or the officer. Izuku suggested, quickly checking the plaque on the next door closest to them. Eri's playroom. So, that scumbag at least gave her something to enjoy. Ryuji scoffed, hands tucked in his pockets. Well, he is her father, so giving her some good things isn't out of the question. Makoto shrugged. I'm going in. Izuku announced, slowly placing his hand on the doorknob. He expected it to be locked, but was thankful it clicked open. He opened the door and walked inside, greeted by a colorful room full of toys and stuffed animals. It was a shockingly large room, comparable to that of Madaram's gallery with the transparent paintings they could pass through. Platforms stuck out from the wall above, with slides flowing down from one to the next. A ladder connected them on each level as well, designed like monkey bars for play. On the outside this seemed like something a child might enjoy, at least to the eye. But the toys were off. Like they lacked any sort of care. The stuffed bears and dolls were faceless. Lifeless toys that could bring no joy. A pitiful attempt to win the trust of the child in his care. Yusuke's voice dripped with disdain as he made his thoughts known. His words hit home, the team wordlessly agreeing on the sentiment as they continued further in. They climbed the monkey bar-like ladders between levels to go higher up. While the activities seemed to expand, they never felt genuine. A small empty slide with only 2 chutes. A swing set for one on the next. All depressing to look at for the thieves. Hey, it didn't occur to me until now, but why would he have this room here? Anne asked, the others looking at her in question. I mean, this part of the lab, even with a playroom, is just way too creepy for a kid. That is a good point. One might think he was trying to keep her from the outside world in the first place. Yusuke stroked the tip of his chin. But for what reason? Finally they reached the top level and, to Izuku's chagrin, he still saw no sign of Eri's cognition. It shouldn't have mattered. It wasn't her true self or even her shadow. But he wanted to know how Chisaki viewed the young girl. Whether their suspicions of him ultimately not caring for her were founded. And how much, if true, horror Eri had been through. But even though Eri was absent, the thieves were given more obvious hints on the final level. What the hell? Ryuji voiced everyone's immediate reaction first. This floor seemed to be the most empty. A couple toys here and there, with a single large table bolted to the ground at the center of the room. Crayons and papers were scattered across the tabletop, as well as the floor itself. What caused their dread was what was written on the papers. On the table. on the floor. Everywhere. It hurts, help, it hurts, it hurts, it hurts, I want it to stop, I'm scared, I'm scared, I'm scared. Izuku stepped forward, hand trembling at his side as he knelt down, his eyes scanning across the papers and floor. It was all the same, crayons staining the ground with the same pleas and cries. All in the shaky, messy handwriting of a child. This poor child, Yusuke mumbled, his left eye closing as he frowned. What exactly is he doing to her? Anne raised a hand over her mouth as she trembled. That piece of trash. Makoto clenched her jaw, hands tightening as frustration bubbled within. This feeling. Morgana sniffed the air before his eyes lit up. Everyone, get ready. There's a black sludge pile erupted from the ground at the center of the room, a shadow taking shape in the form of a gray-skinned and armless Oni, wire robes draped over its body under a rope that wrapped around its chest. What are intruders doing all the way down here? Chisaki-sama will kill me if he finds out. California Smash. Before the shadow could assault them, Carter erupted from a torrent of blue flames. It unleashed a rush of punches that rippled across the shadow's body, each punch crunching its bones upon impact. The Oni couldn't speak or cast a spell, abruptly and quickly be completely overwhelmed. And as the thieves watched in minor awe, they soon saw the raw emotion behind the attack. Izuku's teeth ground together as furious tears trailed down his cheeks, his frustration and pain spilling forth and unleashed upon the shadow. Carter's attack soon came to a stop, the shadow finally allowed to fall to the ground, but no longer capable of fighting. What the hell was that? The shadow coughed as its body fell apart, the pieces turning into black sludge and sinking into the ground. Izuku let out haggard breaths, his arms trembling with a soreness from the exertion of his persona. He shook them out briefly, trying to ignore the pain and walk to his team. Let's go. It doesn't look like he was the officer we needed. Hero, he heard Makoto mumble in concern. Don't waste all your energy, moron. Izuku stopped when it was Bakugo who spoke, his voice a low growl, but carrying no intensity. We've still got plenty to look through. We don't need you dragging us down. Nitro. No, he's right. Izuku stopped Anne as she protested, turning back to the others and nodding. Sorry everyone. I'll try to keep my head on straight. Hey, don't sweat it. It's not like this ain't fueling the rest of us either. Ryuji slapped his shoulder, a frown spreading across his lips. This guy pisses me off as much as Kamoshida. He's gonna get his. Right. Izuku felt his partner's sincerity, as well as the others' own. He turned back to the hall door, leading them on. Let's see what else is here. I'm still a little surprised that shadows aren't roaming this hall. It is the most important part of the palace, after all. Yusuke spoke his mind, his eyes drifting across the white walls of the floor. Not to mention it's so small compared to the others. I wonder if it reflects their base in the real world more than the other floors. Makoto wondered aloud, eyes narrowing thoughtfully behind her mask. It probably has to do with the distrust he's shown toward the other shadows, as well as his underlings in the real world. Even the shadow we encountered was more concerned with Chisaki punishing him as opposed to us, said Morgana. Stop flapping your gums. We've still got a couple rooms to check. Bakugo dismissed their theories, walking over to the door across from the playroom. The others silently followed, Ryuji checking the nameplate. Documentation room. Think we'll learn something here? Ryuji asked, looking at the others. Only one way to find out. Any intel we can get is good intel. Morgana said, the group trickling inside. Another spick and span room with white walls, lined with file cabinets and a desk pressed against the wall to their left. At the far end of the room were several couches with a projector sitting on top of a small stand, a screen lining the wall opposite of it. Looks like we'll have to pore through some of the cabinets. Considering the projector though, I wonder. Makoto walked over to the cabinets, drawing them out. That's what I thought. Looks like DVDs. Apparently he's documented some stuff in video form as well. Wait a sec, look how many cabinets there are. We're not gonna watch all of it, are we? Ryuji blanched. We might be able to figure out more about the quirk erasing bullets. We won't watch everything, but let's see if we can find something relevant to that and what Iri-chan has to do with it. Izuku encouraged, walking past the others to inspect the desk. Mona, can you be lookout? You'll be able to sense any shadows coming. Roger. Try to be quick though, this isn't a safe room no matter how empty. Morgana suggested before skipping over to the office door. As the others searched through the cabinets, Izuku took to searching the desk, hoping to find another tape recording that might continue from the one they last listened to. Hey. Izuku drew his gaze back to see Bakugo holding a disc case. This has that kid's name on it. Give it here. Izuku was met with Bakugo chucking it a little too hard at him, thankfully catching it before it could hit his face. He brushed it off, walking over to the projector and inserting the disc. He swallowed a lump in his throat as the rest of the thieves surrounded him to watch. Our experimentation is proving successful. Izuku's lips thinned into a line as Chisaki appeared on screen. He wore the same beaked mask as in the real world, but instead donned a lab coat and rubber gloves, similar to some sci-fi mad scientist. The camera showed him in what looked like a laboratory, his eye with just a bit of blood. We've been able to harness the power of her quirk into the bullets. Her blood. Anne's voice rose an octave, sweat beginning to bead on the skin of each of the thieves. What the hell? He shut up and listen. Bakugo barked in frustration, eyes focused on the screen. He wasn't being vocal about it, but the burning anger in his eyes was clear to see as he stared up at Chisaki's face. Still, the effects aren't permanent. The first bullets I've constructed only erase the quirk for up to 10 seconds. I'll be extracting more of her body material this time. Hopefully, with more concentrated blood, we'll be able to continue to extend the amount of time that the quirk is taken away. Let's begin. Chisaki turned, walking away from the camera. And the sight the thieves saw haunted their very souls. Eri came into focus, wearing a hospital gown that went down to her knees. She was silently crying, tears streaming down her face. Her bandaged arms were strapped down, the young girl bound to an operation chair while laid out flat. As Chisaki approached, the young girl flinched away in fear, body shaking like a leaf as she whimpered. Please, stop it hurts, come now, Eri. Relax. You know it hurts worse when you fight it. I don't want to do this. It hurts. Please stop. Izuku's stomach tightened, his eyes wide and pleading, begging for something in Chisaki to heed the child's words. Anything decent in him. But Izuku quickly realized there was no such thing within Chisaki. His gaze remained cold. Detached. Unfeeling. Nothing Eri said was having any sort of effect on him. All he did was sigh as he slowly drew his right-hand rubber glove away. The sooner you get used to these operations, Eri, the sooner they end. Now let's begin. Chisaki's hand extended and touched Eri's arm. And without a single breath, that arm exploded in a wet pop of blood. No. The collective voices of the thieves cried out in horror. Anne gripped onto Ryuji, the punk in so much shock that he clung to her without a thought. Bakoto sank to her knees, shaken, her hands over her mouth as she tried and failed to keep her composure. Bakugo, who was not so easy to horrify, found his breath hitched and his throat dry as sweat poured down his face. Yusuke was in a similar state, hands twitching as his mouth was agape. But Izuku thought his heart had stopped. His chest felt like it would cave in. His head began to spin, falling to his knees and gripping his stomach. He thought he would throw up as tears now poured down from his eyes, unable to stop from sobbing uncontrollably. Today the entire arm was used for the sake of forming these bullets. Chisaki's voice echoed around them, his voice completely void of remorse or any emotion. Further tests will be run to find out the exact potency of the bullets formed by this amount of her body used. Hopefully it gives us the desired effect. Otherwise we'll have to move on to both of her arms. Chisaki's voice remains unmoved. All the while Eri's sobbing echoed behind him. Izuku slowly raised his head despite his better judgment. If there was any sort of good to take from this, it was that her arm had been reformed. But her cries made it clear that the pain remained. The video came to an end, and silence ruled over them. Izuku growled low, his hands balling into fists as he pounded into the floor. You piece of shit. We'll make you pay. He repeated this several times as his hands ached inside his red gloves. Hero, come on. Izuku felt Morgana's small paws tugging on his jacket. Izuku dragged his head up, looking at the others. They were all still visibly disturbed by what they had watched. All of them now left with a chilling new outlook on Eri's experience with Chisaki. Only one thing left could reassure them. One desperate grasp at reassurance that this was just another horrible distortion of reality courtesy of Chisaki's palace, that what they had seen wasn't Mona. Izuku mumbled, trying to shake away his horror. Please tell me she's not going through that in the real world. I can't. Yet their hopes were shattered, and Izuku's face rapidly drained of blood at Morgana's mournful reply. This was so specific. So detailed that I can't say for sure if what she's going through in real life is any different. That son of a bitch. Ryuji finally snapped, kicking over the projector in the room. How could he do that to her? I thought I was a tool to Madaram. Yusuke's voice trembled as he held his hand over his mouth. But Madaram at least had the courtesy to feign his kindness. This monster, he does not even deign to offer her comfort, only a cold void exists within him. Poor Eri, she's all alone here. Stuck in this loop of constant pain and abuse from him. Bakoto could barely utter her words loud enough for the others to hear, hands shaking in front of her. This isn't fair. She's so young, and she's enduring so much. Anne cried, her arms over her stomach and hugging it. Eri, you all done crying yet? The thieves drew their gaze up to Bakugo, Ryuji ready to snap at him. But he stopped as he realized the explosive blonde stood at the door, his back to them. While his face was hidden from view, everyone could see how his hands had balled into fists, shaking with the raw anger he was somehow managing to keep in check. We can sit here all day crying about it, or we can get off our asses and do something about it. That's why we're here, right? He's right. Izuku wiped his face on his sleeve. Even as his heavy heart weighed his legs down, Izuku stood. Let's go. Yeah. Yeah, I'm in. Ryuji stamped his foot, fingers trembling with anger. We'll finish this. Anne snarled, following close after him. No more wasting time. Yusuke agreed. Eri will be free soon enough. Makoto breathed in, calming herself. Damn right. Because the phantom thieves will save her. Morgana encouraged, fired up to keep going. Right. Now let's get going. A moment after walking through the door, Izuku sank to his knees, his head suddenly swimming and his vision turning topsy-turvy. Hero. Ryuji shouted, reaching a hand out to grab him. But he soon fell just behind him. What the shit? Bakugo had hit the ground as well, his voice slurring. Wa was as going and Morgana's voice mirrored Bakugo's, his speech fumbling as he spoke. My head wise. Izuku looked back the best he could, trying to focus his eyes even as they misted over. Everyone had succumbed to the feeling of intoxication, stumbling over their own hands as they struggled to balance. It's like we're drunk or something, Ryuji tried to say as he struggled to stay up on his hands. Poor brats. Guess you can't hold your liquor, eh? Izuku blinked his eyes, trying to shift his focus to the voice. He felt his head heat up with anger, the quirk-induced affliction, doubling what anger he might have normally felt. The man clung to the ceiling, a mask likely signifying his place in the 8 bullets over his face. He wore a fur vest over his back with brown pants. Despite the mask, he was chugging a bottle of liquor, the alcohol spilling out the sides of his mouth as he consumed it. Brats indeed. Are these truly those who have been crawling around our headquarters and defeating the 8 bullets? Izuku swayed his head to the new voice, eyes barely focusing forward to find another figure standing before them. He wore a more archaic medicine mask, a wide-brimmed black hat on his head, and a black cloak draped over his body, hiding his arms. Shit. It's the other bullet guys. Ryuji stumbled over his words and hands. Where are our manners? Allow me to introduce ourselves. My name is Nemoto, and my compatriot is Dodoro. But now that you know who we are, I believe it's only courteous if you tell us who you are. So, who are you? The even-voiced one spoke. But his words had a strange flow to them, and Izuku found his body urged to answer. Midoriya Izuku, leader of the Phantom Thieves. Izuku covered his mouth as the word spilled from his mouth. Hero. What are you doing giving your full name? Makoto asked, clearly in no better wits than the others. I didn't mean to. I was. Izuku's half-blurred eyes glazed over as he gave a tired glare. That was your quirk, wasn't it? Indeed. Lucky for you, we don't have to torture you for information. I'll be able to extract it without issue. The bullet declared, crossing his hands behind his back. Unlucky for you, for interfering so deeply with our business, we'll be torturing you as an example. But after we get our information. Dibs on the girls. They're hitting all the right spots for me. The freak on the ceiling cackled, still guzzling down a bottle of sake. Still, to think that our righteous leader Chisaki would become one of your targets is quite fascinating, Nemoto declared, rubbing his chin in thought. I believe our operation has been quite under the radar. We'll have to extract how you came to even learn of him. Hero. Izuku grit his teeth as he dragged his eyes back to Bakugo. He was curled up on the ground, arms twisted around him. But despite this, his expression remained fierce. And his right hand was aimed directly upward. Now, let's begin with the rest of you. We'll get all of your names, then all of the names of your family members. Izuku felt sweat trickle down his face when he heard that, the Yakuza now crouched in front of him. Izuku wasn't looking his way, but he could feel his body hovering close over him. We'll have to make examples out of each of them as well. But don't worry, their deaths will be quick. Unlike yours. We were. Izuku swung his head back to look at the gangster, his eyes half-lidded but hiding none of his ferocity. Already really pissed off before you know. Oh? And why's that? The masked man inquired curiously. Izuku didn't feel his quirk in action this time, but answered. We saw what your bastard leader did to Erichin, his own daughter. It pissed us off real bad. Izuku hissed out, preparing to make his move. Until Nemoto laughed. Izuku raised a brow, minorly confused but thinking he was laughing at the sentiment. Ah, I see. This makes even more sense. You're the brat who tried to stand up for her with the old man. Chisaki was right. The stench of would-be heroes is quite sickening. The man chuckled, standing at full length as he looked down on Izuku. It has made even children act out of turn, not knowing their place. His dream of curing this world is indeed just. So you just buy into that crap as he's ripping his daughter apart. Anne did her best not to slur her words, though it earned her a laugh from the man suppressing them with his power. His daughter. You brats really bought that? Izuku blinked, throwing his head back to look up at the Yakuza glued to the ceiling. That girl ain't his daughter. What a load. Enough, Dodoro. Nemoto cut him off. We don't need to be giving them any information, regardless of how useless it will be to them soon. But his mask drifted back down to Izuku, who stared up at him with the utmost despair. Since the cat is out of the bag, yes. She's not his daughter. Though he is her legal guardian. Still, with that knowledge, you should now realize just how much you let her slip through your fingers. You might have really been able to take her away, kidding. The lifeless lenses of his mask glared deep into Izuku's soul, the absolute emptiness behind it being clear as day. That lie was the only thing that saved you and that old man's life. As well as Eri's obedience. Don't think for a second that you could have been her hero, then or now. You brats have finally reached the end of this little journey. Izuku swallowed a lump in his throat, his lightheadedness making it harder to process the information. But even in his inebriated state, his words only succeeded in one thing. Completely pissing him off. Now, Kaken. Neither Yakuza had time to react. Bakugo's palm crackled before letting loose a thunderous eruption. It was strong enough to cause the other thieves to fall to the ground and reached all the way up to the roof. Gaagh Todoro was completely enveloped in the blast, his body completely visibly charred as the smoke cleared. He was out cold, at first stuck to the roof before slowly peeling off and falling toward the ground. What Todoro? Nemoto cried out in shock, having fallen on his ass. He fished into his jacket for something, soon producing a revolver. But as he raised it, Morgana was quick to react, grabbing his rapier and slashing through his wrist. Gah. You're just a cognitive being. Got nothing to feel bad about, Morgana landed sloppily, almost falling over, but managing to stay standing. I'm still feelin' that asshole's power, Bakugo snarled but started to rise to his feet. But, it's fadin'. Yeah, Izuku pressed off his knee to stand, his eyes and cheeks red as he staggered over to Nemoto. What I was saying earlier about being pissed off. Izuku's eyes reddened with his infuriation, the others standing shortly behind him. I said it because now we're not just mad, we feel drunk as shit, Ryuji finished, pounding his fist into his hand. Indeed. And now you have 7 extremely motivated and angry drunks with you in their way. Yusu continued, glaring death down at Nemoto with half-glazed eyes. I hope you got your laughs in. Cause now it's our turn. Makoto put her knuckle dusters on, her red eyes burning with rage through her mask. Lucky for you, this won't hurt your real-world version. Unlucky for you, it's gonna hurt a lot. Anne snapped her whip in her hands. Give the order, hero. Morgana rested his rapier on his shoulder, looking up at Izuku. Wait, stop, heroes aren't supposed to act vengeful, right? Nemoto almost pleaded, hobbling back on the ground away from them. You're right, they're not. Izuku drew his bow staff, gripping it in both hands. But I already told you, we're the Phantom Thieves. All-out attack. It was a sloppy display, and definitely not their best form. But what they lacked in technique was more than made up for in brutality. Nemoto was struck into the air before being rained down upon with their fury, his body twisting and turning in agony as they unleashed hell on the cognitive being. As the group finished their attack, Nemoto fell to the ground and bounced once before evaporating into thin air. As both Yakuza dissipated, the thieves felt the effects of the cognitive being's quirk fade, their minds and bodies clearing of the fogginess that encumbered them. As well as some of their rage now vented out. Not gonna lie, that felt way better than it should have, Anne giggled awkwardly, rubbing the back of her head. Meh, it was just a cognition, so don't sweat it. Ryuji shrugged with a grin. I know I feel a million times better now. We hadn't run into shit since getting down here. A good punching back certainly livens things up, Bakugo chuckled like a villain, causing the others to sigh. And thankfully it looks like those guys had the badges we needed. Morgana skipped forward, collecting the remainders of their fallen enemy off the ground. Looks like we should be able to get to the treasure's location from here. Then let's not waste any more time. Come on, guys. Izuku said, feeling a little more refreshed than he'd like to admit. I hope that doesn't become a usual thing. The thieves proceeded onward, taking the badges to the final door barring their way. Izuku inhaled a breath slowly as he and Ryuji held their badges up to the door, his chest tightening as he mentally prepared for what was on the other side. Access granted. Izuku prepared his revolver as he took the lead, checking the corners of the room around them. Inside was much like what they saw in the video of Eri's torture. The wide-open lab with large glass chemical vats at the edges of the room. It was surprisingly empty, a familiar operation table at the right edge of the room. Unlike the white room outside, this part of the floor was somewhat more grayish metallic overall. The air was thick and musty. The boiling chemicals echoed around them. Look, the treasure. Morgana pointed to one of the vats, one specifically surrounded by a metal cover. Despite this, it was still unable to hide the ethereal shine that the thieves sans Bakugo were familiar with. Then what the hell are we waiting for, let's bust it open. Bakugo took a step forward, but Izuku held an arm out. What? We can't just grab it and go. We have to make it materialize first. Yup. Now that we've established our infiltration route, the final step before taking the treasure begins. Morgana took over, paws on his hips. I'm sure you remember the calling cards we put out to the other palace rulers, correct? No. Not surprising, Makoto sighed, walking up next to him. Essentially, we put out a calling card to announce ourselves to our target. But the knowledge that their treasure is in danger, it materializes in their subconscious. Once that happens, we can make our move. Bakugo cocked a brow up. You telling me we're gonna leave now pretty much. But now we have quick access to the treasure, so the next time we come in, it'll be smooth sailing. Anne said with a little more optimism. Doubted. Last couple times we went for the treasure, we always got caught on the way out, Ryuji sighed, stuffing his hands in his pockets. We'll probably have to fight that asshole ruler here too. I'm all for it though. I'd love to give him way worse than what we did to his lackey. No, as much as it pains me to say it, we should still avoid him. Izuku's lips thinned into a line, the words making the taste in his mouth bitter. We saw how the palace exaggerated the others. I can't imagine how it'll transform someone with his quirk. Especially after seeing what it's capable of. The group fell silent, their expressions becoming grave. Bakugo looked around at them for a moment before scoffing, turning around to the exit. Stop sulking already. We'll be done soon enough. If that's what we gotta do then let's get it done already. When are we sending the damn thing? Tomorrow night. The sooner the better. Izuku reaffirmed. Then let's get going already. We're done with this shithole today. Bakugo huffed, stomping out of the room. As expected of our newest member, Yusuke sighed, but smirked at the others. Still, I feel some of his care behind his brashness. Right. I think Nitro's starting to like us, Anne giggled. The others started to follow them out, but Izuku realized Morgana was behind them all. He turned to the cat to see him staring at where the treasure was secured, looking oddly deep in thought. Is something wrong, Mona? Oh, nothing, just Morgana scratched his paw on the back of his head. Just an odd scent coming from the treasure is all, but I can't tell exactly what. Izuku tilted his head in question, but Morgana simply shook his head. It's nothing. Let's go. We'll figure it out when we've got the treasure in our hands. So, how are we sending this one? The thieves had reconvened at Izuku's room. Bakugo had greeted it with his usual contempt much to Izuku's embarrassment, but after a bit of idle talk, the teens were quick to get to business. The night was getting late and there was little time to waste. That will actually be quite difficult this time around. We won't get away with the previous methods I think, Makoto frowned, crossing her arms. Not only is staying unseen by the Yakuza important, we can't forget the heroes are also keeping an eye on the area. Right, that could be bad. Last thing we need is to be seen throwing a bunch of calling cards around. Anne agreed, leaning forward on her knees. Morgana-san, we'll likely have to rely heavily on you for delivering this calling card. Izuku said, feeling some guilt as he looked at the cat. Don't even sweat it. I'll make sure our message is loud and clear for those Yakuza jerks. Morgana declared confidently. Still, we should seize the opportunity to make ourselves known. With the heroes supposedly keeping an eye on their operation, it will be hard for them to ignore us once it's done. Yusuke grabbed the tip of his chin. We should be quite loud with our calling card. Huh? What's that matter? Bakugo asked, sipping on a soda as he looked at Yusuke. The goal of the Phantom Thieves is to give courage to the unseen. And to strike fear into those who think they've avoided the eyes of the law. Morgana declared, his furry brow hardening. The more we get our message out, the more people will hear it. People have lived in a fantasy world since the golden age of heroes started. It's done a lot of good, but there's no doubt there's room for society to improve. Makoto supplied, linking her fingers in front of her. We'll wake them up to the changes that need to happen. Hell yeah. We're not gonna let some shitty authority figures think they can play God to others anymore. We're hunting anyone done looking to use and abuse others. Ryuji huffed. My friends were all used or mistreated at one point. So was I. We'll do everything we can to keep that from happening while the thieves exist. Izuku declared, meeting Bakugo's gaze with determination. Bakugo's face remained neutral, his eyes unreadable. Before finally he clicked his tongue. If that's what you idiots wanna do, then fine. But you better keep this in mind. Bakugo stood up from his seat, walking to the head of the table to address them all. What you guys are trying to do is a lot bigger than you act. That's a big-ass social reform. You're gonna have a lot of people hating you for this shit, especially while things look good. The thieves were surprised by Bakugo's wisdom on the matter, sharing a look across the table silently with one another. They all looked to their leader as the information processed. They saw his resolve and conviction and immediately were put at ease. We're prepared for that. Makoto said first. We know we won't be favored by many. Especially not heroes. Izuku stood up, locking eyes with Bakugo again. But if it brings about the change we want, we'll take it. Bakugo remained locked in his gaze for a long moment, as if testing the resolve that the others had believed in. But seeing no hesitation in their leader, Bakugo scoffed. Good. Otherwise you'd all be wasting my time with this shit. I don't want to be part of a team that flakes at the first sign of trouble. You're real hard to please, you know that. Ryuji chuckled, throwing a hand over Bakugo's shoulders, much to the explosive teen's irritation. Don't worry about it, we're all game for what's to come. Hope you don't get cold feet. Yeah, right. I'm gonna be the #1 hero, damn it. If this shit gave me cold feet, I'd never be able to reach that peak. This is nothing. Oh yeah? Then why don't you come up with how we'll deliver the calling cards then? Anne teased, not expecting him to take the challenge. You're on. But of course, he did. Wait, Kaken. You don't have to do all that, I said I'd do it, right? You want it loud, but don't want it tracking back to us, right? Easy. Bakugo declared, the fire of competition burning behind his eyes. Again, I must admire the passion he puts into taking on such challenges, even if it's for the wrong reasons. Yusuke mused in mild intrigue. Well, if you're that set on it, then by all means. How should we deliver the calling card? Makoto asked, also curious as to what his solution could be. Fake Blondie, how long can you run at super speed for? Huh? It's been a while, but I can keep it up for like 5 seconds. After that I gotta catch my breath and let my legs cool off. Ryuji said, his eyebrow cocked in wonder. Good, then you're gonna put the cards around Asakusa, not the cat. Bakugo declared, pointing a finger. What? Why? There's probably a shitload of people who can talk to animals and make 'em do what they want. Eventually they'll wise up if they keep seeing the cat roaming around. At least call me by name. Morgana hissed in irritation. Kaken has a point. Izuku grabbed his bottom lip between his thumb and index finger. Looking to the side in thought. If word gets around that a black cat is the common denominator at the scene of the calling card placements, it could be a lot of trouble. They'll be on lookout for him later, and because he travels with me everywhere, it'll bring a lot more suspicion on me and the group as a whole. Changing up who delivers the calling cards and how is a good idea. Yeah, okay, that's so damn noisy. Bakugo snapped, his eyes twitching in irritation. You still mumble like a weirdo. I'm sorry. Izuku raised his hands in surrender. Yes, Izuku's changed in a few ways but not completely. Makoto giggled, nudging the green-haired teen playfully. That suits me just fine. It was nice seeing the mumbles back after so long without it, Ryuji snickered, wrapping an arm over Izuku's shoulders. You feelin' a bit more like yourself? Myself. Izuku blinked, scratching his cheek. I didn't realize I was acting odd. You've been tense ever since we started this palace. It has been some time since we've seen you in great spirits. Yusuke said bluntly, earning a quick jab to the stomach from Anne. Hush, you guys. You're not supposed to say it straight out like that. Seriously, Anne sighed, pressing a hand to her face. But it is good to see you act more like you again. Mumbles and all. Thanks. Izuku rubbed the back of his head, cheeks red. But he slowly shifted back to a more sullen expression, his eyes hardening. With the infiltration route established, we're a lot closer to saving Eri-chan. I can feel it. I won't be back to my full self until this is over, I think. He looked up at his teammates and squeezed his fist in front of his chest. Please, bear with me a little longer. There you go, getting all serious again. Come on, dude, you know we've got you. Now and forever. Ryuji grinned, slapping his shoulder in reassurance. Makoto, Anne, Morgana and Yusuke gave their reassurance with smiles. Izuku felt their support immediately, nodding in appreciation. If you're all done getting sappy, we need to go fake Blondie. Bakugo said, pointing to Ryuji. We're gonna send that card tonight. Tonight. We just got back. He's right, Kaken. You should do it tomorrow night. Izuku said, causing the explosive teen to click his tongue. Everyone needs to be fully rested for what's to come. We've got a long day ahead of us. Yeah, plus we haven't even written out what will be on the calling card yet. Makoto said, her eyes narrowing. I'm sure we've all got something we want to put in. Let me write it. Izuku said, his lips falling into a frown. I have a good idea of what to put. Everyone can give me something to add once I show you all. Call him a garbage fire. Bakugo already interjected, earning an eye roll from Makoto. No way. You're not gonna ruin our calling card with vulgar talk. We had to keep Ryuji from ruining the first one. Yay hey. Ryuji looked at Anne in offense. I've thought about this a lot even before today. Izuku said, drawing their attention back to him. I promised to make it good. Please, leave it to me. How are we progressing on getting everything boxed up? As the previous week had passed, Chisaki had continued to go about his normal schedule. He never deviated from any of the usual outside activity. At least the activities that he didn't mind any prying eyes seeing. If the heroes were watching like he surmised, they would not see anything change in his schedule. It's going well, Chisaki-san. We've moved much of the machinery into boxes and are working on getting the chemicals sealed and ready for shipping. Nemoto announced, going through the manifest they had put together. Good. The sooner the better. We'll be moving out within the week. Chisaki said, turning to leave. I'm going to do a few more extractions with Hiri today. Make sure any successes are stored as well. Of course. Nemoto nodded. Though I must admit, I'm surprised you were able to secure us another base so quickly. Typically a move like this would require much longer to establish a new safe house. I have a very eager benefactor working in our favor right now, Chisaki answered, sparing a look back at Nemoto. And if all goes well, both my dream and our clan will see the fruits of our labor pay off. Sir? Nemoto asked, mildly surprised to hear this for the first time. Don't worry about it, Nemoto. I've been careful who I picked for our support, we should Chisaki-san. Chisaki-san. The clan leader drew his eyes to the roof as he heard the disembodied voice of Mimic above them. We have a big problem. Big problem on our hands. Are the heroes making their move? Chisaki asked, a brow quirked as he felt his body tense. And not quite, but something else. Mimic's mask moved along the wall and slid down next to Chisaki and Nemoto, a small arm reaching out with a large red card in his hand. You should read this. Chisaki cocked a brow, looking to Nemoto who wordlessly took it instead. The Yakuza turned it over to look at the back and let out a small gasp. This is the Phantom Thieves. The Phantom Thieves. Chisaki parroted as a small bit of familiarity echoed in his mind. Those vigilantes who took down the artist. Why yes. They sent a card like this to his gallery. So that must mean, read it. Chisaki cut him off and edged to his voice as he put two and two together. Of course. It reads to Kai Chisaki, Yakuza leader of the 8 precepts of death and the heartless being of wrath. You have operated in the shadows, hiding your sins in darkness, abusing those around you as tools, destroying those no longer of use to you, and poisoning the world with your pretense of a cure. The Phantom Thieves will not let your silent conquest go unchecked and shall steal your desire and make you confess. We will set you, and those beneath your feet, free with the truth. From, the Phantom Thieves of Heart. As Nemoto finished reading, he looked up and felt his face pale behind his mask. Chisaki's face had broken out into hives as if he had touched something dirty, and his fists were shaking at his sides. Poisoning the world. What nonsense. I'm curing this ravenous disease. Chisaki snarled, stomping his foot in fury. What do the Phantom Thieves of Heart know? They're just some 2-bit vigilantes without a fucking clue. Oh, one more thing, Boss Mimic was hesitant to speak up, especially with how Chisaki snapped his head to look at him. Oh, that's not the only calling card. There's a bunch of them. Litter in the streets of Asakusa that lead to the base. What? Chisaki snarled, the veins in the whites of his eyes blistering out. What should we do, Chisaki? Nemoto asked, not expecting Chisaki to snatch the calling card from his hand. We'll have to deal with the Phantom Thieves for this kind of challenge. Chisaki huffed but narrowed his eyes as he tried to seize control of his emotions. But not now. Whatever's going on, one thing is clear, we've been made. For now we'll have to accelerate the schedule. Tell the men to work twice as fast. If the heroes take this kind of challenge as well, it could be even worse for us. We have to get out of here within the next couple days. Yes sir, I'll put everyone on high alert. Mimic saluted before sinking into the wall. Nemoto, get Iri's room packed up and keep her close. The last thing we need is her pulling another escape attempt while this is going on. Of course. I'll make sure she's well looked after. Nemoto nodded, turning around to head to where she was being kept close by. Nemoto, Chisaki stopped him momentarily, his eyes sharp as a knife. Don't breathe a word of this to her. The last thing she needs is another reason to try and run off. Of course. It'll be kept quiet around her at all times. Nemoto bowed his head before turning around. I'll gather some men to begin packing her things. Good. Just leave her bed for now. Everything else can go. With that Nemoto took his leave, Chisaki standing alone now. Deep inside him, an echo of himself stood. The figure cloaked in white with yellow eyes. Chisaki's shadow stood in contempt of this news. I will herald a new world with my cure. Anyone trying to get in the way of that will be eliminated. Come, Phantom Thieves. I'll erase you from existence. Well, looks like the calling card got Chisaki's attention. The palace is on red alert. The thieves hadn't wasted a moment, immediately running into the palace once the school day was over and Bakugo had arrived at the station. On their way to their usual entry point, people had been buzzing all across the streets of Asakusa. The calling card had been mass-produced and dropped from one street to the next of the alley that led to the 8 precepts base. Not bad, Nitro. Looks like your strategy worked, Makoto smirked, looking back at Bakugo. I guess I shouldn't be surprised that you'd be able to make that kind of noise. Shut up. Hey, don't give him all the credit. I had to plant all those. Literally had to run back and forth between stores to make sure I didn't get seen. Ryuji huffed. Yes, and we're all very proud of you, Skull. Don't worry, Anne patted him on the back with a cheeky smile. We should focus on the task at hand. We will likely encounter many foes on our way to the treasure, as well as the palace ruler possibly. Alright, everyone. Let's finish this. Izuku drew their attention with a raise of his fist to the sky. "We're going to steal Chisaki's heart." "Yeah." The other thieves answered with new fervor. Izuku nodded, leading them forward. "Kakin. We'll take the fast route," Izuku said, looking at the explosive teen. "Open the front door." "Now you're speaking my language, nerd." Bakugo gave a wicked grin in response, taking the lead ahead of the group. He let several small explosions off in his hands before increasing the intensity, his body beginning to spin in midair as a wave of smoke and blasts were left behind him. "Open up, assholes." Hotzer impact. Bakugo's attack drilled a hole right through the front door of the compound, the eruption making the others stop to cover their eyes. As the dust settled, several shadows were barring their path but were visibly shaken up by their arrival. "What the hell? Who just blew a hole in the wall? What's going on? Are we under attack?" "Damn right you are." Ryuji announced them as the thieves walked in, grinning as he swung his arm in a circle to stretch it out. "The phantom thieves have come to wreck your shit. Hope you assholes are ready. You brats think you're tough shit, bring it on." One of the shadows quickly transformed into the red demon and the other into the faceless one. But Izuku hadn't wasted a moment, drawing his mask away. Rakshasa. A dual-bladed persona manifested from his soul, unleashing a quick barrage of blades upon their detractors. It was quickly followed by Makoto, revving in on Johanna as she sailed in. "Feel our rage." She rammed Johanna into the Oni shadow before hopping off above Suikai, her fist igniting with nuclear energy. With a thrust of her fist down, she unleashed the energy upon their foe, the shadows screaming as they were enveloped by her explosive spell. Both were dispatched quickly, dissipating into black ooze piles. "We got more shadows coming in," Morgana announced as he spied out the side hallways. "They're not our concern. Our objective is right ahead." Yusuke motioned to the elevator which was dead ahead from their position. "Yeah, no time to waste. Let's head for the treasure," Izuku said, waving for the others to follow as he took the lead. "Don't walk in front of me." Bakugo snapped as he quickly ran forward, everyone hot on their tails. Izuku quickly produced their badges and scanned them in, sending them to the bottom floor. As the shadows attempted to pursue, they were cut off as the doors closed in front of them, the thieves heading down. "Alright, piece of cake." Anne gave a thumbs up. "That's the easy part. Getting out will probably be far more difficult," Morgana said before looking at Bakugo. "You sure that new move of yours will help us escape?" "Damn right it will. It'll make getting out of here a breeze." Bakugo spat, rolling his shoulder. "Let's hope you're right. We might need it for the task at hand, too," Makoto said, red eyes narrowing behind her metal mask. "We're arriving," Izuku announced. The elevator soon slowed to a stop, the doors sliding open. Izuku led the others out, and to their surprise the door leading to the treasure room was already open. Izuku looked around in caution, the group proceeding slowly forward. The doors along the way were all shut tight, and the lights lining the hall were dimmed, flickering even. "Do you smell any enemies, Mona?" "Yeah. But none around us. Only straight ahead." Morgana narrowed his eyes, looking at him. "I think we can all guess who." "Good. Even if it's not a full-on fight, I'd say we're owed a smack or two." Ryuji clicked his tongue, kicking the ground eagerly. "Whatever combat we initiate, we must not lose sight of our goal. We should only fight to get him out of the way," Yusuke reminded the others. "Once we have the treasure, we should make our escape. We gonna stand around talking about it all day or we gonna do it?" Bakugo huffed impatiently. Izuku wordlessly walked forward, the other thieves trailing close behind him. As they made their way through the door they found that the operation room was also dimly lit, the green chemical vats providing the greatest source of light. Izuku immediately drew his eyes to the vat holding the treasure above. And his heart sank into his stomach. Mona, is that no way, what the F? That's the treasure at the center of the vat, sealed behind glass and kept breathing with an oxygen mask, was Eri. She wore the same hospital gown they saw her adorning in video, her arms bandaged up just like her real-life counterpart. Her body floated at the center of the unknown liquid and her eyes only barely opened to reveal strikingly yellow irises. "Eri's the treasure," Izuku muttered, his vision shaking as he felt a mixture of emotions well up inside him. "Not just Eri, that's more than some cognitive copy," Morgana said, drawing their eyes back to him. That's her shadow." "What?" Izuku asked in confusion. Her shadow. "How I don't know, this is really unique of a circumstance," Morgana mumbled, his eyes staring at Era's shadow, trying to determine the truth. "But I can sense it. That's not just a treasure or a cognitive being, that's definitely Eri's shadow." How why?" Makoto put her hands over her mouth, still trying to make sense of it. "Pitiful, isn't it?" The thieves immediately tensed up, getting on guard as a sickeningly familiar voice greeted them. A steady and slow footfall echoed around them. For the first time since their arrival in the palace, Chisaki's shadow appeared before them. Like they saw in his video journal, he wore a white lab coat with a black feathered collar and his usual medicine mask. His piercing yellow eyes trailed to Erie's still form as she hovered above, showing no emotion whatsoever. Erie's cursed existence has been nothing but agony for those around her. From herself to her family, Chisaki's yellow-eyed glare drifted to the thieves, as if pointing a gun to their heads. To you, her heroes. You piece of shit. How the hell can you treat such a little girl like this? What the hell did Eri do to deserve this shit? Ryuji snarled, his anger overshadowing the apprehension instilled in him from Chisaki's leer. You're the one causing all of her agony, you bastard. How can you act as if she brought it on herself? Anne cried, her teeth gritting together furiously. All I've done is give new purpose to her cursed existence. She has assumed one of the most important, in fact, roles needed to see my dreams fulfilled. Chisaki turned to them completely, his hands drooping at his sides. Her quirk is special. Unique. Powerful. The ability to rewind any living being that she touches back in time. And is the key to bring change to this world. Rewind. That's Izuku parroted, looking back up at Eri. Her quirk is so powerful that her own parents fell victim to it. They were quite literally erased from existence by a mere touch, Chisaki explained with an empty chuckle. I've done the world a service by sealing her away. And soon I'll become the world's savior, curing it of the disease known as heroism. Combined with my quirk in her blood, Eri has become the key to the quirk erasing bullets. And soon, it'll be perfected. You've sacrificed the blood and happiness of Eri for this delusion of yours, truly the ambitions of a madman. Yusuke spat in disgust. This is no delusion, brat. Chisaki's voice suddenly intensified, echoing around the room and causing the lights to darken further. It's because of filth like you that our world is living in a dream. Because of you, great men like my boss were forced into hiding. And that is something I revile more than anything. Rich coming from the biggest pile of trash here. Bakugo barked in answer, pointing with his tomahawk. You stink more than the pile of corpses outside, asshole. And like real damn heroes, we're gonna take you out like the garbage you are. He's right. Izuku finally said, his eyes and fists trembling with rage. Someone who would use a child use Eri-chan like a tool. Someone with so little regard for human life, we're taking you down and saving her. We won't let someone like you mold the world to how you see fit. Chisaki suddenly started to cackle, his gloved fingers curling. Listen to all of your drivel. Truly the regurgitations of an all-infectious disease. I can't wait to silence all the nauseating voices that spread this sickness. Chisaki's gloves suddenly burst off his hands, tearing to ribbons. Before the thieves could react, he was already slamming his hands on the ground. The room rumbled as tendrils of metal sprouted from the ground. What the shit, I thought he just destroyed and rebuilt stuff. He touched Ryuji guffawed in shock. Don't stand around gawking, move. Bakugo snapped, his warning just in time as the tendrils pierced through the air like spears, all aimed at the thieves. Izuku grit his teeth as he narrowly dodged one, eyes burning furiously as he pulled away his mask. Chisaki. Carter took shape above him, his fist pulsing with bless energy. Take this. Righteous smash. Just as Carter threw his punch, Chisaki countered by sprouting a metal block from the ground, using it like a shield. Carter's blow dented through the metal and punched a hole through, but the attack lost its impact thanks to it, bringing no harm to Chisaki. That green hair, you're the brat who tried to save Eri before, aren't you? Chisaki spoke from behind his cover, his yellow eyes piercing through the dust to glare into Izuku's own orbs. You think you can still be her hero? Pathetic. Izuku's eyes flared open when he felt the vibrations of the ground beneath him, quickly kicking off the ground and jumping back as several tendrils sought to pierce through him like a spike trap. All your efforts today will be for nothing. Izuku winced as one of the spikes changed direction and gave chase. He grit his teeth as one stabbed into his shoulder, grunting out in pain. And you'll be as powerless to save her as you were then. As Izuku used Carter to swipe the tendril away, several more began to sprout out, readying to pierce through him. No. He's wrong. We'll save her. We'll get your head out of your ass, Deku. The ground below him was suddenly hit with a concussive blast, Izuku blinking as Bakugo tackled him after stopping the assault from below. They rolled across the ground, the explosive team getting off of him to face down Chisaki. But thankfully he was backed up this time by the others, Mikoto and Ryuji, lashing out with their thunder and nuclear spells to make him cover up with his walls. Kaken, you put a sock in it. Izuku flinched at his harsh response, especially as the explosive team glared back at him. What the hell do you think you're doing losing your head like that, moron? I'll kill you. Why? Izuku asked, shocked to hear Bakugo of all people scolding him about this. You're supposed to be the damn leader, right? Izuku blinked, the explosive teen standing up straight as he drew his tomahawks. They need your ass to keep his cool more than anyone. Come up with those damn annoying plans of yours, and we'll see 'em through. Izuku stared at his childhood friend's back, but felt as if he was looking at someone else completely. The Kaken he knew never offered his hand in help even at the best of times in their relationship. But here he stood, helping him get his head on straight. And even asking for his strategies. Kaken, just make sure you don't mumble, got it, Bakugo huffed, bending his knees as he prepared to lunge forward. Izuku's eyes drifted down to Chisaki, finding his mind suddenly clear. The Yakuza leader was playing defense but sprouting spikes out of the walls used to defend. Ryuji stumbled back a bit as he avoided them but was quickly out of the danger zone. And it all suddenly clicked into place. Kaken, wait. Izuku stopped the explosive teen in his tracks, his eyes laser focused as he quickly climbed to his feet. I've got an idea. About damn time. Despite his words, a small smirk lifted at the edge of Bakugo's lips. TCH, what a nuisance you all are. Hisaki clicked his tongue as he made pillars appear from the ground below them, attempting to keep the thieves off balance. This jerk, he's making it too difficult to get a direct hit in. Morgana huffed in irritation. Then we won't try for that. Izuku ordered, running forward. Team, fan out. Get room. Right. Everyone quickly followed his lead, getting distance between themselves and Chisaki. You'll regret doing that. Chisaki smirked behind his mask as he made more of the metal tendrils surface around him, looking at Izuku. As the clear leader, he needs to be taken out first. Fox, Skull. Snowstorm. Chisaki hesitated, eyes darting around as he tried to figure out who was who. We'll bury you in ice. Yusuke summoned Gomen, ice shards sprouting from the ground and approaching him swiftly. Chisaki clicked his tongue, slamming a hand on the ground and making another metal wall to block the ice from hitting him. You think I'm ignorant? Chisaki put another hand on the ground, blocking a blast of lighting from Ryuji at his backside. I know what you're trying to do. But this entire room is burning, Twister. Chisaki's eyes widened before looking up, Anne and Morgana above him. Take this. Zoro and Carmen materialized above, a vortex of wind sailing down at him as flames merged with it. Chisaki clicked his tongue, making the metal around him into a ball to shield him from the blast. The flames and wind couldn't pierce the makeshift shell Chisaki had made. But shit, I've cut off my vision. Chisaki clicked his tongue, realizing his mistake. He had to act quick and make a big enough gap to see what Queen Panther. Let's turn up the heat. Izuku didn't want to give Chisaki time to think, staying on the offensive. He summoned Orthus, fire exhausting from its mouth before letting out a powerful Agi spell. Burn. Anne unleashed another blast of flame from Carmen, matching Izuku's intensity. We'll make you come out. Makoto blasted the shell with her nuclear spell, the three unrelenting. Even as he avoided any direct damage inside his metal shell, Chisaki soon realized what they were doing. The metal was heating up and he was starting to bake inside of it. Sweat began to pour down his face and the air was becoming thick. He was gasping for air, falling on his hands and knees even as burns appeared on his palms. Shit, these brats. They're trying to force me out. But if I don't come out, I'll suffocate or burn to death. Chisaki knew he had little options left, his gaze lifting up to where he remembered Izuku standing. His voice hadn't changed location, this could be his only shot. Have to take him out now and throw the rest of them off. Now. Chisaki had to pull a Hail Mary, opening the shell up just enough for him to peer out. Indeed, Izuku was in the same spot as before and so Chisaki had to throw him off. He made another tendril sprout from the ground below him, but Izuku anticipated it, quickly dodging forward. He's in range. Chisaki unfolded his bubble and sprouted them up like walls, opening his path up so he could now launch himself directly at Izuku with his arms outstretched. You lose, brat. He snarled, looking to make Izuku's entire body turn into a bloodstain with a touch. But as he met Izuku's gaze, all he saw was a fearless glare. You've lost. Wachisaki's body felt pain in two places, a metal bat smashing into his jaw from the right side as a concussive blast met him at the waist. Ryuji and Bakugo had been lying in wait for him and stung his body with a club to his jaw and a blast to his stomach. Eat shit and die. They shouted in sync, showing no mercy as they knocked him hard into the ground, his body hitting the metal with a heavy thud. Chisaki was sprawled out on the ground, his eyes rolled over as the shadow apparently fell unconscious from their assault. The thieves took a moment to catch their breath, the room graced with silence, now that Chisaki had been put down. They looked around at one another and slowly began to smile, Ryuji letting out a couple breathless laughs. Hell yeah, we did it. We did it. Ryuji grinned, his nerves suddenly calming down. Yeah, we did. Serves you right, asshole. Anne pumped a fist, looking down at Chisaki's prone form in disgust. We actually beat him. I knew a 2-bit Yakuza like him couldn't stand up to the phantom thieves. We're too good. Morgana gave a proud hop and grin, puffing out his chest as he rested his paws on his hips. He was quite the fearsome foe regardless. If it wasn't for our tactical approach, we may have had a far worse time. Yusuke smiled, looking at Izuku. Not bad, leader, Makoto nudged him with her elbow. You did good. I couldn't have done it without you all. Izuku smiled in return. You're welcome. Bakugo huffed out, but instead of the usual retorts, Ryuji just laughed and slapped him on the shoulder. Yeah, you were great too. Good job helping Hiro get his head on straight. Happy? TCH. Whatever. Bakugo turned away but gave a smirk. Still, you were damn gutsy. I'll give you that, Sakamoto. Whoa, even Nitro's acting happy. Who would have thought? Anne fought her shock as she put a hand over her mouth. Shut up, Blondie. Despite his touchy retort, Anne and the others only answered with a laugh, ignoring as Bakugo seethed. Come on, you guys. We still have a little girl to save. Makoto reminded them, though Izuku was already running over to the vat containing her. We should drain it before we get her out. He said, looking for a computer. One stood just close by and he was quick to make his way to it. Why don't we just bust it open? Bakugo scoffed, walking over with the other thieves as they stared up at Eri's still hovering body. We don't want to hurt her. Imagine what would happen if we broke the glass while all the water was still inside. Anne scolded, causing Bakugo to scoff. It's okay. We'll drain the water out, then open it up. Just 1 second there. Izuku found the controls to the tank relatively easy, inputting several commands and beginning the draining process. In his eagerness, Izuku quickly hopped up onto the piping and machinery of the tank, making his way up to the glass. Queen, when it's fully drained, open the glass. I'll help her out. Got it. Makoto jogged up to the terminal, waiting for Izuku's word. Once he reached the top, he stood on the small edge of the tank where he could, looking through the other side at Eri. The tank made a blaring sound to signal its drainage, something that seemed to stir Eri from her slumber. As her eyes started to blink open, she finally looked up and met Izuku's gaze. She swam back in fear, her mask bubbling as her voice was muffled. It's okay, Eri-chan. It's okay, we're here to save you. Izuku said, placing his hands against the glass and offering a kind smile. He realized his mask was still on, so he pushed it up so that it rested on his forehead. Eri's shadow seemed to recognize him, her once fearful yellow eyes now widening in realization. I'm sorry I let you go before, Eri-chan. So please let me take you away from here now. Eri's shadow stared at him in wonder, the water slowly beginning to drain enough so that her feet were touching the bottom of the tank. As the water sank below her neck, Eri began to stride forward, pulling the mask away. Why, you're here to save me? Her voice trembled and her eyes shook. Izuku had to do his best to hold back his tears and kept smiling as he tried to reassure her. Yes. We'll take you away from here. I promise. The water completely drained from the tank and Eri stood by her lonesome inside. Her hands came up to her chest, slowly walking toward him as she seemed to believe his words. But as she stepped closer, her eyes darted past him and she came to a halt, her yellow eyes now completely terrified. You're not taking her anywhere, Izuku, and the thieves snapped around, finding Chisaki peeling himself off the ground with some agonizing grunts. TCH, give it up, asshole. You lost already, Ryuji gritted his teeth as he drew the bat from his back again. But if you want us to put you back down, we'll happily do it. I underestimated you brats. Underestimated the delusions of heroism you've been instilled with. Chisaki slowly turned around, raising a hand with his thumb and middle finger pressed together. I'll show you what I'm really capable of. That my dream won't fall to you shitston so easily. With a snap of his fingers, a black sludge rose from the ground, causing the thieves to get on guard. From it appeared two of the bullets they had defeated, Bakugo clicking his tongue as the behemoth Rukia and Nemoto finished materializing. Shit, not these guys again. Ryuji clicked his tongue. Rukia, Nemoto. I need your power. Chisaki spoke, walking between both men. Anything you need, boss. We'll handle these rats. Rukia banged his fists together. Nemoto on the other hand looked back at Chisaki. The two locked eyes, and there seemed to be a moment of understanding between them. Whatever you need, Chisaki. You may have it from me. Thank you for all your hard work, Nemoto. Papa thieves felt their throats dry and eyes widened in shock when both bullets' bodies popped like a wet balloon. Before they had time to process what happened, the chunks of their corpses swirled in the air above and wrapped around Chisaki. It was only now that they understood just how horrific and terrifying Chisaki's quirk, and by extension him, truly was. That the man they were dealing with, you thieves wanted a villain to play hero against. Fine, you'll have it. Was a complete monster in every sense of the word. The convulsing carcasses wrapped around Chisaki swelled up in size. Feathers and cruel veiny arms with heinous black claws sprouted from the disgusting mess of organs and body tissue. At the center of it all, the beak that once represented Chisaki's mask took shape like a giant bird's skull. As it continued to grow, the beak slowly peeled open, revealing Chisaki's mutilated upper torso, now merged with the atrocity he had created with his underlings' bodies. But there's no happily ever after waiting for you. The clawed hand scraped into the metal below it, a disgusting hiss echoing from the skull. All that you'll have is a faint memory and a nameless tomb. A disfigured monstrosity screeched below him, and suddenly it hopped in the air toward the teens. Izuku didn't have a choice but to dive out of the way, Chisaki's aim directed straight for Erie's container. He rolled across the ground but was quickly stopped by Makoto, his eyes darting up to the monster clinging to the wall above them. Eri-chan. It didn't have to be this way. Eri could have avoided watching you all die. But now because of your bravado, Eri will have to bear witness to the death of her heroes. Chisaki's distorted and cruel voice echoed around them with a heinous laugh. This fight isn't over, everyone. Be careful. Morgana declared, quickly pulling Izuku and Makoto back so that the group could face down the palace ruler together. What the hell did he do to himself? He's not even human anymore, Ryuji mumbled, unable to hide his horror. Who cares? He just made himself a bigger target. Bakugo dismissed his concern, though even he lacked his fully confident air. But regardless, he stepped forward without fear, now drawing out his minigun. He wants to make it easier to hit him, then let's give him what he wants. Are you so sure about that? Chisaki's mangled arm stretched out and positioned him higher on the wall, just above Erie's container. It would be a shame for the very heroes attempting to save her let a stray bullet go off course. Kakin, stop. Izuku cried out, thankful to see Bakugo was already lowering his gun in aggravation. You coward. You'd hide behind a little girl. Anne screamed furiously, only to hear Chisaki laugh in response. I'd do whatever gave me an advantage, even if I had to chop every limb off her body to do so. Several more cruel arms sprouted from his back, razor-sharp claws at the end of their fingers, as well as stiff black feathers. They shot down at the thieves like torpedoes, attempting to impale them in one swift attack. Everyone fall back. Izuku ordered, drawing his staff as he narrowly deflected one of the arms by blocking. Though not fast enough to avoid all the pressure, clawed fingers scraping against his side. Gah. Hero ah. A claw cut into Makoto's back as she narrowly avoided direct damage, her body thankfully covered by a sheen of metal. Still, the power behind the blow was enough to still cause her pain. I gotcha. Ryuji sped forward and grabbed them both by the collars, gritting his teeth as he pulled them back further from Chisaki. The group found themselves back up to the front of the room once again, Chisaki looking down at them from the containers as his disfigured lower half climbed along the vats. Don't think you're safe at any distance from me. I'll turn your corpses into my next experiments. Chisaki snarled as the feathered arms stretched wide above him and the feathers themselves became sharp as blades. The arms then flung forward to send a rain of feathers down in a lethal hailstorm of blades. Gomen. Zoro. Thankfully Yusuke and Morgana were quick to respond, their personas taking shape and attempting to deflect the feathers as they released wind and power skills to knock them off course. You two okay? Ryuji asked in the brief reprieve they had as Yusuke and Morgana covered them. I live, Izuku grunted as he touched his side, blood trickling across his gloves. I've got you. And quickly cast Dia, the spell soothing the pain and stopping the bleeding, even if it didn't fully heal. This guy's insane. He's completely different from before, Ryuji clicked his tongue. We'll have to bring him back to the ground if we want to grab the girl. Bakugo growled, agitated at his inability to attack from their spot on the ground. Whatever we do, we must do it soon, Yusuke announced to them, his left eye closed as sweat trailed down his face. Yeah, I don't know how long we can hold this, Morgana grunted, a paw resting on his knee. Enough. The black feathered arms ceased their attack, but the meaty fibers of his lower body started to come together, transferring up to the arms. Eri formed much larger and muscular, the hands increasing tenfold in width. Block this. Mona, Fox. Move. Izuku cried as the arms balled their hands into fists. With a lunge forward, the hands rocketed forward. Gomen and Zoro attempted to block the strikes with their weapons, but soon found their bodies buckling over from the impact. The pressure transferred to Yusuke and Morgana, both feeling the wind knock out of their bodies as they fell to their knees. Gomen and Zoro disappeared, leaving them vulnerable to a follow-up strike. Die. You first. As Chisaki tried to seize the opportunity, Bakugo and Ryuji acted first, Tombstone and Captain Kidd taking aim with their cannons and blasting the fists to bloody bits. Chisaki hissed in irritation as his arms were forced to return to him. But he merely scoffed at their return fire, raising the pieced-up arms and suddenly returning the splattered meat to them from the ground, making them whole again. What the shit? He can regenerate, Ryuji snapped. That's bullshit. Panther, Queen. Help Mona and Fox. Izuku said, climbing to his feet to stand by Ryuji and Bakugo. He took a moment to analyze the situation, sweat beating down his face. Damn it, we ended up getting pulled into the fight we least wanted. He's even worse than we imagined. What can we do? Erie's still behind him, and his new form is leagues stronger than he was before. Nerd. Look at his body, Bakugo quietly pointed out, readying Tombstone's shotgun again. His body. Izuku quickly analyzed Chisaki, and it suddenly clicked. The arms might have amassed great power, but they made his base form smaller. They were less maneuverable, and what helped him now cling to the tanks was far smaller and less secure than before. That's it. Queen. Izuku looked at Makoto, their eyes meeting. I'm gonna need a ride. Makoto cocked a brow but didn't question it. You've got it. Nitro, Skull. Spread out and take his arms out. Izuku ordered, looking at the others. Everyone else, keep an eye on his lower half. Fox, we'll need you especially for that. What? Yusuke blinked, but Izuku knew he had no time to explain. What are you planning? The muscular arms suddenly split apart into four, not as large as before, but still massive and muscular. You've got no hope to cling to. Hurry up and fall to despair already. Kiss our asses. Bakugo spat as he had Tombstone let out a shotgun blast into one of his arms. It blew it apart, but it was already starting to regenerate. It gave them their opportunity though, Bakugo going far left with Ryuji going right, pulling out his shotgun and letting out several shots. They couldn't take aim at his main body while it was positioned directly in front of Irie's container, but they could keep him from assaulting them at will. Let's go, Queen. Izuku called out, Makoto already rising up and running forward. Right. She quickly pulled her mask off, her persona revving up as it took shape. Izuku quickly hopped on the back, arm around her waist. Book it, Johanna. Irritating. Chisaki snarled as he sent a fist rocketing their way. Makoto leaned forward, making quick maneuvers to avoid the fists. Ryuji and Bakugo kept up their assault, hoping to draw his attention their way. Even as they shot up his secondary arms, his focus remained on Izuku and Makoto. I want you to know before you die that it's your fault. Your fault they're here and that they'll meet their end in this place. Perish knowing that you cost them everything and achieved nothing. You're wrong. Izuku answered back, standing on the back of Makoto's bike, teeth gritting together as he looked into Chisaki's twisted yellow eyes. We're saving Irie and leaving this place. Blow him away, Johanna. Makoto screamed, nuclear energy irradiating from her persona's face. Just as a clawed hand attempted to crush them in its grip, Johanna unleashed its frailest skill, burning it into a charred mess. They continued forward, only to find Chisaki had gathered up his limbs, returning them to their skinny and feathery form. His lower half returned to its previous size and stretched out over the machinery as he raised the arms up. Get torn to shreds. The feathers sharpened once again, the arms lengthening above him. Don't let him fire those off. Bakugo cursed as Tombstone prepared to fire. Shit. I don't know if we thank you for trusting in me, hero. Izuku smiled as he saw ice sprouting across the ground and climbing the vat in quick succession. Chisaki's assault was halted as his lower half was submerged in ice. Wah what? Great job, Fox. Izuku said, looking at the others. Everyone, fire. You brats. This won't. Chisaki's voice fell on deaf ears as his lower half suddenly became their target, Bakugo, Ryuji and Makoto, unleashing their firepower on the claws that clung to the machinery, thankfully out of harm's reach of Irie. Gaagh Chisaki didn't have time to reform the limbs, with his body beginning to fall away from the chemical vats he once clung to. Now, Queen. To Irie. Right. Makoto revved up her bike, sailing through the air and heading for the container with their prize inside. But as they climbed higher, their rise was brought to a screeching halt. Makoto and Izuku snapped their heads back to see Chisaki's mangled arms clutching onto the back of Johanna. No. You can't have her. He's pulling us down. Makoto said, looking back at Izuku. Go. Grab Irie. Queen, go now. Makoto didn't give him room to argue, revving up her back tire to try and burn through Chisaki's hand as he attempted to pull them down. Izuku didn't want to leave her, but knew what he had to do. He stood up on the seat and clung to her shoulders. Using the leverage, he hopped off and jumped through the air, arm outreached toward the tank. In the metaverse, his physical ability was clearly enhanced. But even now, he didn't know if he could make the jump. Didn't know if he could. No. I will. I will save her. His heart burned with conviction, blue flames bursting from his mask. And the brief sensation of falling he once felt disappeared. Flames erupted from his back, fanning out harmlessly behind him. Go and save her, kid. And took shape as a flaming red cape. Feeling Carter's power flowing through him, he cocked an arm back, his fist glowing with blessed magic. Seeing that Irie was safely toward the back of the tank, Izuku brought his fist forward, smashing the glass case open. As Izuku touched his feet inside the tank, Irie remained inside, curled up in a ball with her hands over her ears. Please leave me, she whimpered out, her body trembling. Izuku frowned, seeing her fear. I'll only get you hurt. I don't want to do that. I don't want anyone to die. Izuku inhaled a breath before putting on a big smile, kneeling in front of Irie. You don't have to be afraid of that anymore. Because we're going to save you from this place. From him. He extended a hand, hoping she might take it. You don't need to be in pain anymore. Because we won't let you suffer like that ever again. Irie's shadow slowly lowered her hands, staring into Izuku's eyes. Despite the blue flames that swirled around his brow, she saw the honest and kind boy behind it. The one who held her and clung to her before. And she wished to have those same arms take her away from here. Eri slowly stood up, her gaze focused on the ground at first. But after a brief moment, she ran forward and jumped into his arms. Izuku was taken by surprise but couldn't stop smiling, wrapping his arms around her back. "I've got you, Eri-chan. And I'm not letting you go this time. Okay, give her back." Izuku's smile faded to a frown, but he kept Eri in his arms. He could hear Chisaki's claws scraping against the metal as he climbed back up, even as he heard the faint sounds of his friends, attempting to bring him back down with their attacks. "He's coming." Eri hugged deeper into the crook of his neck in fear, arms and body trembling. "Don't worry, Eri-chan." Izuku turned to face Chisaki as the monstrosity rose up from below, glaring death down at Izuku. "I'll protect you, I'll eradicate you. We'll protect you." Izuku didn't have to check. He trusted that his friends had been on the move. Bakugo had taken the lead, using his explosions to burst his way to the top. Before Chisaki's shadow could reach out for Izuku and Eri, the explosive teen was already cupping his hands together, putting them directly in his face. Stunned Grenade, Izuku quickly covered Yuri's eyes as Bakugo's controlled explosion made a brilliant flash. Right in Chisaki's face. Grah. The monster reared back in agony, but his assault was not done yet. "Now, everyone. Let's finish him off." Morgana gave the order, and the thieves attacked all at once with magic and physical skills from their personas. It made for a prismatic explosion that engulfed Chisaki's upper half, unable to even cough out a sound. Izuku stepped forward, Eri still cradled in his arms. His cape faded away as well as his mask, instead giving shape to Carter high above him. Doomstone materialized next to him, the smoking barrels of his gun taking aim as Carter reared his knees up, his boots igniting with a dazzling white power. Zodanga, Smii-Osh. Chisaki's core was struck with Carter's heels and his face blasted by the gun, Izuku roaring as he sent Chisaki rocketing toward the ground. A sonic boom swept through the room from the attack. The monstrosity that was Chisaki's shadow hit the ground with a heavy quake, shaking the palace to its very core. As his body shook and struggled to stay conscious, Chisaki's eyes rolled back before his body laid out, unconscious. Chisaki had been defeated. And Eri remained in the arms of her hero. Chapter 41. Izuku kept Eri tight to his chest as he carried her down the vat. He and Bakugo avoided the smoking form of Chisaki as they landed several feet ahead of him. "Hey. Not too bad there, leader." Ryuji greeted them first, smacking Izuku's shoulder proudly. "You look so badass." Thanks. I wasn't really trying to be." Izuku laughed sheepishly as he rubbed the back of his head. "Not bad at all, hero." Makoto smiled, nodding in approval. "Yeah, you were so cool up there, protecting Eri like that." Anne pumped her fist. "It was truly elegant work. I'd wager your attack on Chisaki was worthy of a painting itself." Yusuke praised. "I'm glad you've put all my hard work to good use." "I've trained you well." Morgana puffed his chest out in pride, eliciting a small laugh from Izuku as he hey. "Why are you jerks acting like he's the only one who did shit?" Izuku felt like his right ear nearly blew out from Bakugo's irritable growl, while using his right hand to cover Shadow Eri's ear closest to him. "Oh right. I guess you did do stuff too." Ryuji and the others looked at Bakugo somewhat neutrally, eyes trailing to the side. "Yeah, great job Nitro, you were so cool sure, screw all of you." The other thieves burst out laughing, Bakugo grinding his teeth together in annoyance. "We're just messing with ya." Ryuji hooked an arm over his shoulder. "You were cool as shit up there too. Good job looking out for Hero with that new move of yours. Yeah, you were looking like a real phantom thief up there. You're really getting used to this team player role, huh?" Anne slapped his back in amusement. Wait, the thieves quickly brought their celebrations to a halt, all heads snapping around to Chisaki. Despite his voice rising, his body had reverted back to his original state. He was pressing off the ground with trembling arms, his mask halfway on his face as it hung from one ear, revealing most of his face to them. Despite his previously monstrous appearance, he looked surprisingly normal underneath it all. "Give her back, I need her, put a sock on it." Bakugo clicked his tongue, everyone moving to surround him. "You've lost already. It's pathetic." "No, I'm going to build my empire, I have to." Chisaki raised his arm, his hand shaking as he pointed at Eri and Izuku. The green-haired teen turned Eri away from him, cradling the back of her head so that she didn't have to look at him. "It's the only way to make it up to Pops." "You mean the same Pops you put in a coma?" Ryuji scoffed, kicking the ground in irritation. "Yeah, we know what you did to get him out of the way. Great way to show your appreciation." "Shut up." Chisaki cursed, his desperate eyes glaring up at Ryuji. "A brat wouldn't get it. I can heal him, but I can't do that until I've built my empire. Your empire will fall alongside you. All that's left for you is to return to your true self and atone for your sins." Yusuke returned his glare, disgust covering his face. Never, I'll never do that. Chisaki fell flat on his stomach, unable to move much despite his efforts. This world is filthy. I have nothing to apologize for. You're a monster who murders when it seems convenient for you. Who tortures a little girl to further his own agenda. You're far more disgusting than the general public. Makoto's red eyes glowered down at him. Shut up, brat. You live in your bubble of ignorance. Who are you to shut your damn mouth? Bakugo blasted Chisaki across the jaw with a kick, surprising the others mildly. Scum like you can keep his shitty ideals to himself. Nitro, shut up. I didn't do it for you, Bakugo huffed, not looking back at Makoto. I can't stand this asshole being allowed to say anything anymore. Stupid brats, you understand nothing, Chisaki mumbled from the ground, hands clutched over his face. This is new. Morgana's eyes looked at the others in concern. The other palace rulers gave in by this point. But it seems Chisaki's shadow isn't budging. Shit. And if he doesn't return to himself by the time we leave with Eri, Ryuji started to pick up on Morgana's point. Who knows what will happen to him, Izuku muttered, sweat trailing down his brow. I hadn't even thought of that, Anne muttered, genuine worry now lacing her voice. Hey, asshole. It's over, give it up. Ryuji stomped on Chisaki's back, grinding his boot between his shoulder blades. Return to your other self already and confess. Time to beg for forgiveness. I'd rather die, Chisaki snarled, his emotionless eyes staring up at Ryuji in defiance. The faux blonde flinched, shocked by his persistence. You brats think the world is that easy? That you can just demand what you want? At real, everyone looked at one another in concern, now wondering what their next move would have to be. If Chisaki's shadow remained when the palace collapsed, it could be catastrophic to the real Chisaki. They wanted to bring him down, make him confess. But despite his terrible deeds, they were not planning to kill him. But he doesn't have to know that. Hakan, Izuku called to the explosive blonde. What? Izuku waved him over. With an annoyed huff, he stomped over to him. What is it? Izuku leaned in close, whispering something into his ear. Everyone looked at the two in confusion, watching as Bakugo's expression morphed, first from shock, before twisting into a sinister grin that only he was capable of. Heh. Alright, leader. I'm going to take Yuri-chan out of the room. Everyone follow Nitro's lead. Izuku said, looking at them with his brow furrowed seriously. Hero. Makoto raised a brow from behind her mask. Izuku didn't say anything, turning around and leaving the room with Eri. Once they were out of the room and the door closed behind him, Bakugo began to cackle like a real villain. Alright, all of you. You heard the scumbag earlier, right? Bakugo stomped past the others, reaching down and grabbing Chisaki by the hair. He dragged him across the ground by it, throwing his back into the vat so that he was sitting up and facing them. He'd rather die than change, right? Well, guess we're gonna grant that wish. What? Everyone burst out in shock, looking at one another in confusion. What? Chisaki's eyes lit up in alarm, staring at Bakugo's malicious grin. You can't be serious. Ryuji stepped up next to him. There's no way that hero told you to off this guy. It's the only way to protect Yuri at this point, right? And if he's not gonna confess, then why would we let him off with his life? Bakugo dismissed, looked at Ryuji fully, still maintaining his wicked smile. You all trust in your leader, don't you? It's the only way to handle it. But as Ryuji was about to retort, Bakugo winked with his right eye. It took him a moment, but it finally clicked for him. Ryuji wiped the shock from his face and put on a more grave, solemn expression. He's right, guys. Guess the best way to take care of this is to take this asshole out. Ryuji said, drawing the shotgun from his back. Skull, do you even hear yourself? Anne asked in utter disbelief. No. They're right. Makoto said, having been directly behind Ryuji and Bakugo when their silent signal had passed between them. We'll have to trust Hero's judgment on the matter, Panther. He hasn't led us astray yet. They're right, Panther. It's all for Eri's safety. Morgana tapped her leg, looking up at her with his brow knitted seriously. But as he did so, he passed on a wink to her as well. She blinked, looking up at the others. They all nodded, and it finally processed for her. I see. You're right. I'll trust Hero's judgment. Anne nodded before looking over at Fox. You trust Hero too, right? I do. Yusuke might not have seen the signal, but he seemed to understand the sentiment being passed around. He slowly shifted his gaze over to Chisaki, holding his katana up and drawing the blade out a short ways. Then how shall we take care of him? You brats don't think I'll buy that, do you? Chisaki laughed almost manically, though there was a sliver of doubt in his voice. I'm a real killer, not like you little shits. You really think I'd buy that any of you have the guts to actually kill me? Don't make me gag. We saw a taste of what you put Eri through for your fucking bullets, asshole. Ryuji's voice hid none of his malice, his brow hardening as he glared into Chisaki's eyes. You really think any of us got a lick of mercy left for a piece of shit like you? Why you? Chisaki's voice trembled, eyes darting between the teens, looking for an ounce of sympathy and hesitation. They might not have been great actors, but in this moment each one of them thought back to Erie's pain. Her screams. And those thoughts erased any ounce of doubt that might have leaked to the surface. You don't think I'll just Chisaki made a weak attempt to get up, only for Tombstone and Kid to materialize from their owners, cannons pointed directly at him. Just fucking try it, scumbag. Bakugo threatened, a ruthless glint in his eyes. You'll only make it easier for us. Might I suggest a second option? Yusuke stepped ahead of the others, fully drawing his sword. Much of his power comes from his quirk itself. But as I understand it, his quirk is only usable through his hands, correct? I believe you're spot on about that, Fox. What were you thinking? Makoto curled an eyebrow in interest. Well, if he were to be relieved of his hands, I suppose that would also solve our issues, would it not? Fox turned a cold gaze Chisaki's way. Everyone followed, and the complete despair that mired the Yakuza's face was exactly what they were looking for. No you can't, Chisaki muttered, his voice quiet and desperate. You hear that? Sounds like we have a winner. Bakugo cackled, drawing one of his tomahawks off of his belt. You should be happy, scumbag. You'll get to live. Just hope you don't mind having lumps instead of hands. No. Stay away. Chisaki screeched in terror, pressing his back against the wall. You should be thrilled, Chisaki. Without your quirk, you'll be cured like you planned for the world. Morgana smirked, resting his rapier on his shoulder. Don't you want to be cured? I need my quirk. It's the only way I can heal the old man. Chisaki screamed, visibly shaking as the thieves surrounded him. They didn't want to take the chance of him turning his quirk on them, so Tombstone and Kid quickly grabbed both Chisaki's arms and pinned them against the wall. You're the one who did that to him, Chisaki. You have no one to blame for your old man's condition but yourself. Makoto spat in disgust, feeling no remorse for his current despair. Hey, Foxface. You take his right hand. I got his left, Bakugo grinned ear to ear, flipping his tomahawks in the air as he approached. Very well. I'll do it in one swift swipe so that you won't suffer so much. Yusuke went to the opposite end, katana scratching against the ground and causing sparks. Please you can't. Chisaki's head was on a swivel, his previous bravado completely erased as he shook violently. Please. I'll do anything. You already said no, didn't you? That you'd rather die, right? Bakugo dismissed his pleas, looking to go for the final push. I have to live. Please, don't take my hands. I haven't apologized to the old man. I need my hands. Chisaki was becoming a mess, tears streaming down his face now. Then sweared. Makoto snarled, grabbing his collar and slamming his back into the vat. Swear you'll return to your real self and confess to your crimes. That you'll beg for the world's forgiveness, for Erie's forgiveness. I will. I will. Chisaki choked on his own voice, the tears still flowing like waterfalls down his face. Please, I'll do it. Makoto grit her teeth, slowly releasing his shirt. She looked at Bakugo and Yusuke, nodding for them to back off. They did so, and the personas released his arms, Chisaki falling down to the ground as he miserably cried. Pops, I'm so sorry, Pops, Chisaki began to mutter. His body began to be wrapped in a familiar light, his body becoming transparent. I couldn't give you the world you deserved, make sure you give Erie your apologies too, asshole. Ryuji scoffed. Chisaki didn't answer him, the shadow soon disappearing before their eyes. With Chisaki gone, returned to his true self, the thieves let out a collective breath, looking at each other in relief. Holy shit, that was intense. Ryuji couldn't help but laugh, running a hand through his hair. No kidding. I honestly thought we were going to do it for a second. Anne breathed out anxiously, but let out a shaky giggle. Still, it worked. Glad to see you all didn't wimp out. Bakugo smirked, placing his tomahawks back on his belt. You were certainly the person best suited to take the lead on that, I'll admit that much, Morgana scoffed, crossing his paws over his chest. We should give credit to Fox too. That idea about his hands did exactly what we needed. Makoto looked at Yusuke, impressed by his quick thinking. What made you come up with that? As someone who puts great dependence upon the works of my hands, I was betting on him having a similar reaction as myself should such a threat be given. Yusuke admitted, sheathing his katana. I am only glad that he submitted to such a threat. As terrible as he was, taking his hands was far more than I wished to do. Yeah. Who knows what it would have done to the real-world version of Chisaki? Anne nodded before furrowing his brow. Still, a guy like that deserves to have his hands rendered useless the rest of his life. I'm sure it'd give him plenty of time to think about all the crap he's done. Normally I'd be a little freaked out by you saying that, but don't think I've met someone who deserved it as much as that asshole. Ryuji spat, turning toward the door. Come on. Hiro's waiting for us. Speaking of Hiro, he's going to owe us a bit for that one. Makoto narrowed her eyes. The others shared a look of agreement. He had, after all, left this all up to them. They soon set foot outside of the laboratory, Izuku turning with Hiri still in hand. Guys, it's done. He's returned to his true self. Makoto assured him. Now, we should rumble. The palace suddenly shook around them, causing the thieves to nearly stagger. Crap, the palace is falling apart. Morgana said, looking at the others. We need to get going. Right, to the elevator. Izuku led the way, stroking Erie's back in comfort. Don't worry, we'll get out of here safe and sound. Okay, damn, I hate running out of palaces. The thieves huffed as they now stood in the alleyway that led to the Seven Precepts base, all now huffing for air. That elevator felt like it could have dropped at any moment. I can't believe we actually got to the top with it. Anne admitted, hunched over on her knees. I'd have blown out the top and flown us the rest of the way. Bakugo scoffed, clearly having thought of the possibility already. Wait, now that we're out of the palace, where is Yusuke? Was cut off when he found Izuku standing close by. Eri, to their shock, was still there, though her body looked transparent, with light starting to surround her frail figure. Eri-chan, Izuku muttered, looking down at the shadow in worry. Will you? I'll return to me. Eri spoke, her eyes now brimming with a newfound light in them. And I'll make sure she's not afraid anymore. That she knows you're out there. Thank you. She looked around at the rest of the thieves. And for the first time, as tears slid down her cheeks, she smiled. Smiled so sweetly that the others felt tears start to threaten to spill at the edge of their eyes. Thank you all. You're my heroes. Eri-chan, Izuku muttered, raising a hand to reach out. She stepped back, shaking her head. No, the next time you hold me I want it to be the real me. Izuku felt his mouth part but slowly smiled. Even as tears streamed down his face, he nodded. Okay. It's a promise. The shadow gave one last grateful smile before disappearing into thin air, the light dissipating. The others soon surrounded Izuku, Ryuji slapping a hand on his shoulder. Well, I'd say that's a job well done for the Phantom Thieves. Ryuji grinned wide. For now. We'll have to wait and see how Chisaki reacts first. Morgana reminded him, his tail swaying back and forth. What does that mean? Bakugo narrowed his eyes. Well, the change of heart takes some time to fully take effect. The palace owners seemed to go into a sickly state for a bit before making their confessions known. The cat explained to him. TSK. So we gotta wait till he coughs it up then. Unfortunately so. Hopefully not too long this time. Makoto nodded in confirmation. At least Eri-chan should be okay until then. He'll be too out of it to do anything to her in the meantime. Anne said, relief lacing her voice. Yeah, she'll be okay until then. Makoto said, looking at Izuku in assurance. Right, Izuku nodded, trusting her words and smiling at the others. Great job, everyone. Our mission was a success. Hell yeah, it was. We kicked ass. So, now that the mission's over, how are we making Izuku pay us back? Ryuji said, slapping a hand on the team leader's shoulder. Izuku, of course, blinked owlishly in confusion. Pay? Oh yeah. You totally left us to make Chisaki's shadow return to his original self. Anne pointed a finger accusingly at him, though there was humor lacing her voice. Well, I didn't want to leave Eri-chan alone. Izuku stuttered a bit under their scrutiny. And I didn't want her to see what Kaken might do on top of it. Now you're gonna pin it on me. Bakugo huffed, arms crossed over his chest. Sounds like this nerd owes us food for all our hard work. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I agree with Bakuchan. I'd say we're well deserving of a little payment. Makoto smirked, her arms crossed over her chest. Well, I'm sure it was what had to be done, but if Izuku looks to pay us back with a meal, I wouldn't be opposed, Yusuke agreed, the prospect of a meal hard to resist. Then it's decided. Looks like you can treat us to dinner, Izuku. We really appreciate it, Anne said, her and Ryuji shoulder to shoulder as they grinned at him expectantly. Izuku looked around at his team in complete shock, speechless as to how they got to this point. Finally he conceded, his shoulders slumping. Okay, I'll pay for our food. Why, that's our leader. Ryuji and Anne cheered together, walking ahead of the group. So, where the hell are we eating then? Bakugo snickered as he trailed behind them. Oh, maybe this would be a good time for you to meet boss. You better behave though. Who the hell is boss? Izuku sighed, looking at Morgana as the cat trailed at his side. Well, let's take everyone's hungry stomachs as a good sign. I think we're all happy to put the palace behind us. Izuku smiled, looking at his team. Despite the near-death experiences of the day, they were all in much greater spirits. Much better than the past few days had been. And the same could be said for him. Yeah. Agreed. Oh, you have someone new with you today. Bakugo's eyes trailed around the cafe that the group had led him to. He never cared for or frequented any cafes, but the surprisingly comfortable atmosphere was somewhat disarming. A spot far off from the bustling city of Tokyo was somewhat refreshing. Despite Bakugo's own immense volume, he could appreciate the quiet of a little cafe like this. Hi, Sakura-san. Sorry to bring everyone last second here without informing you, Izuku bowed politely. This is an old friend of mine and Koto-san's Kaken, Kitsuki. Bakugo. Nice to meet you. Bakugo's tone was quiet as he gave a stiff bow of his head. If there was one thing his mother drilled into his head enough was to be polite when acting as a guest. We recently reunited with Baka. Bakugo shot her an irritated glare, but Makoto at least cooperated. Baku-chan and thought we'd bring him here for some of your amazing curry. I hope you don't mind. Curry? Bakugo parroted, brow cocked in confusion. This was a coffee shop, wasn't it? What the hell kind of coffee shop makes curry? Ah, I see. Welcome then. Go ahead and take a seat. Sakura, boss as they seemed to call him, said, walking behind the counter. Is everyone getting a plate? If you don't mind. We're all starving, and Izuku promised to treat us for this meal. Bakugo could stop a taunting grin from spreading across his face as Izuku flinched at An's words. I'll be covering everyone's meal tonight, Sakura-san. Don't worry, Izuku said somewhat meekly. Ryuji tapped Bakugo's shoulder, motioning to one of the booths that he and the others were congregating in. Don't worry about that. Just help me set things up and clean and we'll call it even. Sojiro smirked at him, walking over to one of the pots in the back. What happened, lose a bet or something kid? And no, just paying everyone back for their help on a project. Izuku's excuse came, Ryuji and the others snickering quietly. Bakugo couldn't help but blink in wonder. Why was he helping behind the bar with this old guy? Boss is Midori's current guardian, Makoto drew his attention with her words, seeing the obvious question in his eyes. Huh? He slid into the booth next to Ryuji. Hey, new kid. Bakugo quirked a brow at the barista, would you like a coffee? Yeah. With cream and sugar, Bakugo's answer made Ryuji blink. Huh? Here I thought you'd act all tough and drink it black. Huh? Screw that, coffee tastes like dirt without cream. Tastes 1,000 times better when you put those in. Bakugo spat. You're a little more passionate about coffee than I expected. Yusuke's brow raised in surprise. How the hell else am I supposed to wake up in the morning and put up with people's shit? Bakugo scoffed. You're already grumpy as is. I can only imagine what you're like when you're sleepy grumpy. Anne laughed. Shut up. Bakugo snapped, clicking his tongue. His eyes drifted back to Izuku working behind the counter, looking oddly familiar with the kitchen. Since when can Deku cook? He's learned a lot from his time with Boss. You're in for a shock. Makoto said with some pride. Here, for the new kid. Sojiro brought over several plates and cups, the familiar zest of curry wafting through the air. Though Bakugo could pick up a faint smell of some other spices in it. And was that chocolate? Try it with your coffee. Bakugo cocked an eyebrow again, unsure how curry and coffee correlated to one another in any way. But quietly he scooped up a spoonful of the curry and rice, taking his first bite. He couldn't hide his shock from showing. The tangy yet sweet mixture of the curry was unlike any he'd had before. It was delicious. It's good. Why Bakugo hadn't realized how close the others had been watching him, wincing in annoyance as they cheered. Even a sourpuss like Bakugo couldn't ignore Boss's curry. Ryuji high-fived with Anne. Bite me, fake blondie. Bakugo snarled. Glad you like it. Give your coffee a sip, too. Bakugo looked back at Sojiro, soon obeying his instruction and sipping on his coffee. He wasn't sure what this guy did, but the palette of taste that mixed together once again blew him away. What the hell do you put in this? Coffee and curry shouldn't mix this well together, damn it. Bakugo exploded in disbelief before going back to sipping on his coffee and scooping up more spoonfuls of curry. The others only gave a brief laugh but started to dive into their own food. Nothing like Boss's curry after a hard day's work, Anne smiled sweetly, holding her cheek. Hell yeah, this hits the spot. Ryuji's muffled voice came as he chewed his food. Don't talk with your mouth full. Bakugo spat. Feel free to join them, kid. You can relax for a bit and help me later. Sojiro walked away from the table, Izuku soon sitting at the head of it. I'm glad you're enjoying it, Kaken. Sakura-san's a great cook. Izuku smiled at Bakugo, the explosive teen huffing as he focused on his food. So why the hell are you staying with him? Bakugo asked, trying to get off topic. When I was transferred, it was a little further than would have been feasible for me to manage back and forth from home. Bakugo cocked a brow, somewhat curious. But Sakura-san is an old friend of my mom's. He's taking me in for the duration of my year at Shujin. I was expecting more of a troublemaker when he came to stay. Turns out he's more like his mom than I could have guessed. Boss said from the counter. So, will you kids be going up to his room? Probably not tonight. I think we've all got to head out soon to make sure we get our trains. Makoto reminded them all. But thanks for letting us eat before heading home, boss. My pleasure. Izuku had to make sure to pay you back, after all. Sojiro chuckled, walking toward the door. I'm gonna get a pack of cigarettes. Watch the place for me, will you? Yes, Sakura-san. Izuku agreed, grabbing a rag and wiping down the counter. Bakugo watched Sakura leave before narrowing his eyes at the others. What did he mean by go up to his room? Ah, Izuku lives at the top of this place. Ryuji said after swallowing his food, wiping his face. It's actually really cool. TCH. Sounds better than dealing with my damn monster mom. Bakugo clicked his tongue, looking to the side. How dare you? Your mother is delightful. At least she was to us, Makoto scolded, causing Bakugo to nearly bust a vein on his head. Shut up. You don't live with her. Bakugo snapped back. Yeesh, you don't even get along with your mom. Guess that's not a big surprise, Anne sighed before looking at the others. Oh yeah, since we have a sec, are we going to figure out a welcome party for Bakugo? Huh? Bakugo blinked, looking at her in perplexion. Oh, yeah. Guess we could figure something out. Then again, who knows if he would even appreciate it. Ryuji held his chin and thought. I'm sitting right here, you wanna die? Bakugo's left eye twitched in irritation. Oh, relax. We're just trying to figure out what we're going to do for your welcome party to the thieves. It's also to celebrate another palace taken down. Morgana said, popping over the edge of the table. Paws leaned forward. Might you have an idea? It is partly for you. Yusuke asked, linking his fingers in front of him. Like hell. Bakugo blinked, a thought suddenly occurring to him. Something actually come to mind. Makoto tilted her head in question. We'll see. Bakugo stood up from the booth, placing the spoon in the empty plate. Save it for after we hear that asshole's confessed. Tell boss thanks. I've got a train to catch. The others watched him head for the door, looking at each other in mild confusion. That was kinda weird. What got into him? Anne asked. Who knows? Still, if he's got an idea we might as well wait and see what he says. Ryuji shrugged before looking at his phone. Oh shit, he's right though. We all got a train to make. I'm bushed. Izuku collapsed onto his bed face down. It hadn't hit him how tired he was until he was finishing up cleaning downstairs with Sojiro. He nearly collapsed as the day's events hit him like a truck. Thankfully Sojiro picked up on his exhaustion and sent him off to the baths. Izuku nearly fell asleep in the steaming waters. He kept it a brief but clean wash before finally making it to bed. It had never been as comfortable as it was now. Yeah, we definitely all made it a lot longer before breaking off. Still, quite the fulfilling day, huh? Morgana hopped on the bed, curling up next to him. We brought the palace down and saved Iri's shadow. I just wish we could have seen the look on Chisaki's face as his cognition changed. Hopefully we'll get a public view of it when the time comes. I don't know, the police will probably try to keep that private. Izuku mumbled into his pillow as his eyes tried to force him to sleep. But more than anything I hope I get to see Iri-chan again. Yeah. Me too. We deserve to see her smiling. Morgana's mouth curled into feline smile, putting his head down as he and Izuku finally drifted off to ring ugh. Both Izuku and Morgana simultaneously groaned, the green-haired teen fishing into his pocket for his phone. Who's texting you now? Morgana whined. It's Izuku's eyes widened a bit, pressing off his bed. It's Alibaba. Oh. Morgana sat up this time as well, more alert. Alibaba. It's been some time since our last guys seemed content to chat and eat like everything's normal. Of course they knew what we were doing downstairs, Morgana grumbled irritably. Alibaba. Have you changed the Yakuza's heart yet? I suppose we might as well tell them. Izuku said, looking at Morgana. The cat nodded in agreement. Izuku. Yes. We completed our mission today. We're just waiting for the change to take full effect. Alibaba. Full effect? It doesn't happen instantly. Looks like Alibaba doesn't know the full details of the change of heart. Morgana said, some relief in his voice. They may know a bit of our secret, but not everything. They must think it is just a quirk, then. Izuku nodded, looking back at his phone. Izuku. No. It takes time for the heart to fully change. We should find out soon, though. Alibaba. Fine. Just remember, once that change is made public, it'll be my turn to call in that favor. Izuku. Who are you? Why do you know so much? Izuku's question, of course, went unanswered. He sighed, putting his phone down. I guess we're not going to find out much just yet. Well, at least we have a little time to relax. They seem to want to make sure that our change of heart happens first. Morgana suggested. Yeah, that's good. Izuku's head dropped into his pillow, no longer able to stay conscious. Morgana let out a yawn, following his lead and drifting off to sleep. Alright, so what's the scoop? What are the Phantom Thieves planning next? Izuku had hoped for some time off to relax after finishing Chisaki's palace. Perhaps use the time to focus on studies or hang out with Ryuji or one of the others. But he supposed a day out with Miss Hima and Suzui wasn't the usual work that some of his other confidants were. It was nice to talk to them both after quite some time, anyways. So he met them at the usual diner in Shibuya. Miss Hima-kun, we've been over this. He can't just spill his guts that easily. Shiho scolded, crossing her arms over her chest. Izuku was more than pleased to see that she was in good shape. Some of her lost weight over the past few weeks had been regained. She was looking healthy. Right. Sorry, Miss Hima apologized, bowing his head. It just feels like we haven't heard much lately and I'm getting restless. I'll admit, I've been a little worried too. Shiho narrowed her eyes, looking at Izuku. Even Anne's been pretty quiet about what's going on. I'm sorry, this was a really big target we had to deal with. We weren't trying to keep anyone out. Izuku scratched the back of his head, feeling guilty. I can't say the details yet. This is a really important case. But you'll know soon enough. Ugh, that answer again. I get it, but it still sucks to hear. Miss Hima whined, stretching his arms forward over the table. Things on the fan side have slowed down a bit since Madaram. I'm really sorry, our next big target was difficult in a few ways, Izuku said, bowing his head in apology. Oh, you don't have to worry about Miss Hima-kun. He's just overthinking about the overall interest and traffic of the fan site. Shiho then shot Miss Hima with a somewhat judgmental look, one he clearly winced at. Especially when it supposedly helps him talk to girls. Huh? Izuku blinked. Look, it was just some harmless chatter about the Phantom Thieves. It wasn't like I was saying I know the thieves or you know Miss Hima-kun. The fan side is supposed to spread the word of the Phantom Thieves message and be a haven for their supporters. Not act as your dating site. Suzui-san. Miss Hima slumped over in his seat, embarrassment taking over. You don't have to say all that. After making sure those girls didn't waste your time, I'd say I've earned the right, Shiho smirked, looking back at Izuku. We're both trying to be useful to the Phantom Thieves, right? Oh, of course. I wasn't trying to. I didn't think I was. Miss Hima looked guiltily at Izuku, who had watched the scene play out quietly. I'm sorry, Midoriya. I didn't mean to use the fan site for that. Izuku gave a small smile, of course not angry, but thankful for Shiho's intervention on the matter. It's okay, Miss Hima-san. I'm sure you meant well. Even so, I took my eye off the ball for a sec. What's wrong with me? Miss Hima sighed, his lips thinning into a line. I'll make it up to you and Suzui-san, I promise. Miss Hima-san. Oh, Miss Hima. You're doing just fine as is. Shiho spoke up, offering a small smile. You just got distracted and I get it. Hard for you to not jump at the chance to meet some girls. She let out a small giggle as he flustered up. But still, I'm glad you understand. We'll get back to working hard for Midoriya and everyone's sake. Yeah, we'll keep running the PR, don't you worry. Miss Hima said, her words motivating him. In fact, I'll do another scan of the site tonight and see if we've got any interesting cases for you guys to take. I'd appreciate that. Izuku smiled, glad to see both in higher spirits now. He spared a look around, a little nervous to say this in a public place, but knew no one was paying attention to a couple of kids. Well, I can't say who or what yet, but maybe you can put this headline on the fan site. Shiho and Miss Hima raised a brow, leaning in curiously. Put the Phantom Thieves have stolen another heart and to look forward to it. Izuku told them, the pair practically shining with excitement. That's good, that's really good. Miss Hima grinned, looking at Suzui. We have to put that up tonight. I'll make sure we put it on the front page for all to see. Shiho smiled, looking back at Izuku. Thanks for the scoop. It might not be much, but a little teaser like that always gets people excited. Glad I could give a little something. Izuku offered with a small chuckle, sitting back in his seat. He was glad to see that the two were getting along and that their work on the fan site was benefiting both the team as well as the pair. He could feel their bond strengthen through it. Crack Moon confidant. Rank 3. Hey, you never called Kawakami, did you? Izuku blinked at Morgana's question. He had returned home shortly after parting with Shiho and Miss Hima and was currently helping Sojiro clean the kitchen up. Morgana, of course, had the tact to wait until Sojiro was out of the room to pose the question. No, I haven't, Izuku admitted, rubbing his neck guiltily. We got so wrapped up in Chisaki's palace, I completely forgot. Though now that he thought about it, Kawakami had shot him some looks during class. She hadn't said anything, but there were some small obvious glares. He figured that it was her telling him to stay quiet, but then again it might have been because she was waiting on his call. In which case, he did feel even more guilt. I guess we're a little overdue for that. Izuku sighed, pulling out his cell phone. He did wonder if it was actually okay to be calling her from his cell though, his eyes drifting to the yellow phone on the bar. It would be a lot harder to trace back to me in that case. Hey. Izuku jumped as the bell to the front door chimed, looking up to see Sojiro standing in it. I've got to rush home for some things. You mind locking up? Not at all. I'll handle it. Izuku gave a shaky thumbs up. Sojiro cocked a brow, clearly a little suspicious. Okay, just make sure you're not up too late. He said before closing the door behind him. Izuku sighed in relief, turning back to the phone. You really need to work on hiding your feelings. Morgana chuckled. I'm gonna walk around for a bit. Wait, I'm still a little, you've got this leader. Morgana quickly abandoned him, trotting up the stairs and likely heading for the window in his room. Izuku suddenly felt very alone and self-conscious, looking at the yellow turn-dial phone. It's okay, Izuku. It's just your homeroom teacher moonlighting as a shady maid. You deal with much shadier people. With a few breaths in and out, he picked up the phone and dialed the number she gave. Hi, this is Becky. How can this maid be of service? Becky. It's Midoriya. Kawakami went silent for a moment before finally answering. Oh, it's you. About time. Here, I thought you'd just leave well enough alone, was her tired response, quickly reassuring Izuku that it was indeed his teacher. Well, I did promise you some answers and I need money. It'll be 5,000 yen. You okay with that? Sure. That's reasonable. Izuku nodded to himself. Great. Then I'll be over there soon. So this is your room, huh? Izuku wished he hadn't brought Kawakami up to his room. How many times would he have to suffer people seeing his memorabilia? All he could do was sit on his couch hunched over, twiddling his fingers. Why yes, since I've moved here. Oh, don't worry. I'm not going to judge you over your aesthetic choice. Kawakami astutely picked up on the reason for his fluster. In fact, it's kind of telling. It's also a little confusing. What do you mean? Izuku raised his head, meeting Kawakami's gaze. Well, you stood up to Kamoshida when no one else would, despite the fact that you were so quiet. Izuku raised a brow, shocked to hear she knew that. Oh, we all heard. Kamoshida talked about how you tried to act tough with him. It was his whole reason for trying to expel you. Ah, right. Izuku trailed off, the memory making him frown. And, of course, he ended up being the bad guy in it all. So clearly you were in the right. Kawakami crossed her arms over her chest, her expression thoughtful. And all the All Might stuff. It's clear what kind of sense of justice you have. Surprised a kid like you didn't try to get into UA. Izuku winced at that. It had been a while since someone mentioned his desire for that, but it still made him a little sad to think about. I was planning to try. Oh, right. Your record and your quirkless. Izuku felt like he was sinking further into his seat as Kawakami listed both things. Oh gosh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. I'm sorry. Izuku raised his head to look at Kawakami, seeing genuine guilt in her expression. It's okay, he sighed, sitting back up. I've accepted it for a while now. Still, I feel like I owe you for all that. Kawakami frowned, touching her chin in thought before her expression brightened. I know. How about this? Every now and then, I'll call you in during your homeroom and let you skip class. Really? Izuku blinked, shocked to hear her make such an offer. Why, you don't have to do all. No, I do. Not just because of what I mentioned, but also as a continued motivator to keep this, she motioned to her maid outfit, under wraps. It might help take some stress off you to not have to deal with homeroom, right? Though, if your grades in school start slipping, I do retain the right to take away this privilege. Though considering your grades, I don't think that will be much of an issue. Izuku honestly wasn't opposed to this offer. Most kids would be over the hill about it, and, if he was being honest, there were rare times he had time to himself after school nowadays anyway. An hour or so to do what he wanted instead of being in class was quite helpful. Alright, I accept. Then it's a deal. Izuku wasn't expecting a simple exchange like that to form a contract, but he was quite used to it by now. I am thou art I. Thou hast acquired a new vow. It shall become the wings of rebellion that breaketh thy chains of captivity. But the birth of the temperance persona, I have obtained the winds of blessing that shall lead to freedom and new power. Ugh, this is what I've come to, making deals with one of my students. Kawakami groaned aloud, shrugging. Well, nothing to be done about it. By the way, if you ever need help cleaning this place up, feel free to call. Really? Izuku was surprised by the offer. Not for free. That would cost money. Kawakami quickly explained, not wanting him to get the wrong idea. Truth be told, I'm considered over the hill for this kind of job. So I don't get requested that often. She was loath to admit, but at this point there was little use hiding it. I see. I'll keep that in mind. Izuku rubbed the back of his neck. I'd really appreciate it. Plus it'd also put me at ease about our deal. Kawakami explained before pressing a hand against her face. I'm even relying on you for help like this, This is getting bad. That reminds me, Kawakami-sensei. You still haven't told me about why you're doing this. Izuku reminded her, the teacher tensing up. I know you need money, but it sounded like there was a reason for it. Right. Well, truth is my sister's really sick. Kawakami's words were a little too quick for Izuku's liking. It sounded like a fake excuse if he ever heard one. She doesn't have good insurance, so I've been shouldered with taking care of her, you know. So that's why I'll take whatever extra money I can get. I see. Izuku doubted that he could get more out of Kawakami as things were. She was hiding something else, but perhaps that was something he could figure out at a later date. I'm not sure if I even should, but maybe it is something I can help with. Still, he would at least play along with her for now. I'm sorry about your sister, Kawakami-sensei. If I can afford to call you more in the future, I will. Why you will? I mean, yes, that'd be great. Kawakami smiled, his reassurance seemingly working. I'll try not to rely too heavily on you, but any little I can get helps. I understand. Then I look forward to the next time I call you, sensei. Izuku smiled. Same here. Next time you'll really get to see Becky in action. Kawakami made a cute curtsy, holding up a peace sign. Unfortunately it seemed a little bit too much for Izuku, unable to react in any way. A short and awkward silence passed by before Kawakami quickly shuffled off. Okay, bye. Izuku watched as she left, still a little stunned, but soon letting it pass. Not my strangest confidant, but it's still up there. This is the completed form of the draft I was working on before. I would like your opinion on it. It had been some time since Izuku had last reconvened with Yusuke, just the two of them, so when Yusuke asked to meet up about his art piece discussed some time ago, Izuku was happy to do so. Thankfully this time they would meet in his room as opposed to Mementos. I'll do my best. Izuku nodded, hoping to help Yusuke as much as possible. You have my thanks. Now then, behold, Yusuke drew the tarp away from the canvas he had carried into the shop, revealing his painting. Izuku's eyes widened in wonder, the painting both beautiful and somewhat befuddling. Due to the subject at hand, I have aptly named it Desires. Please, tell me what you think. Izuku stared at the painting for some time, sweat trailing down his brow. It was a complete mess of black and red, fitting as he had used Mementos as his reference. The center was a black swirl, and the colors muted. He would say it wasn't what he was expecting, but I don't know much about art, but I think it looks great, Yusuke-san. Wonderful. Just as I hoped, Yusuke smirked proudly. Still, his eyes looked expectant, eyes drifting between Izuku and the painting. But as good as that is to hear, there must be more you can say about it. More? Oh, Izuku looked back at the painting, lips pursing. Something along the lines of a 400-word review would suffice. What? Izuku's jaw slouched, unsure how he could sum something like that up for him. Art was not his forte. It's alright. I won't ask for that at this very moment. Izuku breathed in relief when Yusuke dropped the subject. Still, this is how I've chosen to depict desire. It is a foul chasm deep within the heart. Our visit to Mementos was quite insightful. It helped shape this painting as well as deepen my understanding of desire and the heart itself in a way that I never thought possible. Wait, Izuku raised a brow, his words processing this. Do you think this is what all desire looks like? But of course. Desire is what drove men like Madaram to their dark deeds. Yusuke declared, holding his head high as he regarded the name with disgust. Chisaki desired to rule the criminal underworld. Madaram desired fame and riches. All their ambitions derived from this one epicenter. The heart and its festering desire for more. Izuku watched Yusuke for a moment before looking back at the painting. He knew nothing of the art world. Nor did he really ever try to explore the idea of feeling something from an art piece. But seeing Yusuke's depiction of desire, it didn't feel right. I don't agree with that, Yusuke-san. Izuku wasn't trying to start a fight, even as he was looking at the painter with a soft frown. What do you mean? It's true that desire was at the center of all their evil deeds. That it drives people to do terrible things. Izuku walked up to the painting, his eyes narrowing as the muted colors seemed to speak to him. Tell him exactly how Yusuke felt. But someone can desire to do good. To live a peaceful life. Helping others. It's not all darkness at the center, right? But the good desires of the few do not represent the many, Yusuke denied, his brow hardening as he looked back at his painting. What this painting represents are those ruled by desire. Their hearts completely lost to it, leaving only an abyss. Is that not what Mementos has shown us? Mementos is I don't know what Mementos is. Not completely, Izuku admitted, looking away for a moment. But to me Mementos is the darkness that everyday people must live with. Not their desires ruling them, but people trying to get by despite the harsh reality hanging over them. It seems we are at an impasse, Yusuke frowned, closing his eyes in frustration. Izuku frowned, realizing he might have upset his friend. Only to be thrown off as Yusuke began to laugh. But perhaps that is what I need. Excuse me? Izuku blinked, confused. Art is meant to invoke this kind of reaction. A piece left up to interpretation. Something for others to reflect on themselves with, Yusuke declared, smiling as if quite pleased with himself. This discourse is what I wish to invoke. I am most interested in hearing the thoughts of others and how they might intertwine or contrast the feelings both of us have mentioned. Izuku was somewhat speechless. Instead of offending Yusuke, he apparently gave him an answer he wanted. Sort of. I thank you, Izuku. This at least reassures me that it's a matter my piece will inspire conversation over. Yusuke placed a hand on his shoulder, closing his eyes. I will be presenting this piece to a public exhibition in which people will be able to observe it and many other pieces. Oh, I see. Izuku's eyes drifted to the painting again, at least appreciative that the situation sort of resolved itself. People will be able to see what I've deemed to be the heart in its rawest form. Izuku, despite our contrast in view of the heart, I wish you to be there when it is presented. You do. Izuku blinked at him owlishly. Indeed. In fact, perhaps it will be through the voices of others that we may determine who is right between us. Whether this abyss is truly the heart in its complete shape or if my own understanding is skewed. Regardless, I feel this will be the spark I need to finally revitalize my artistic spirit. Izuku was always impressed with how much Yusu could throw him off. Not that it was a hard thing to do, but his eccentricity definitely stood out from the rest of the group. Still, he admired his hard work and determination. I'd be happy to attend with you, Yusuke-san. Perfect. May our next outing deliver the truth. Yusuke smiled, clearly pleased to have Izuku's support in the matter. Crack Emperor confidant. Rank 2 now, if you might be so kind, could you help me carry this back down? It was quite difficult getting here in the first place. Oh, sure. It was a wonder to Izuku how Yusuke had managed to get this piece here on his own. The two awkwardly fiddled with it in the stairway, trying to make sure no damage came to the piece. Be very gentle, Izuku. This painting holds the keys to my future as an artist. That's a lot of pressure, Izuku squeaked out as he suddenly got far more nervous. You two okay? Sojiro asked from behind them, clearly concerned about both them and his customers. Yes, please excuse our intrusion, boss. We'll be out of your hair shortly, Yusuke tried to reassure from the top of the stairs, holding the back of the canvas. If you say so, Sojiro muttered, trying to focus on the television past them and let them work. Then maybe let's edit down and readjust, Yusuke-san Izuku suggested, setting the painting down gently by the edge. Yes, we've gotten it down now. I should be able to take hold of it from here. Yusuke slid past the painting to grab it from the center. Thank you for the help. Right, I'll walk with you to the station at least, Izuku offered. He turned to Sojiro, Sakura-san, I'll be. He blinked, Sojiro's eyes wide in awe as the half-burned cigarette hung limply from his lips. Sakura-san. Izuku. He turned to Yusuke, the artist's brow furrowed. He pointed to the television, drawing Izuku's gaze this time as well. And the headline made his heart stop. Asakusa Yakuza base raided by Night Eye Hero Agency, leader and brass arrested peacefully. Chapter 42. Is there really no way for us to expedite the process? Mirai Sasaki, also known by his hero name Sir Night Eye, let out a patient sigh as he pushed his glasses up and regarded his ward, Mirio Tagada. We've been over this, Mirio. We cannot hope to rush the situation. We need every bit of intelligence and evidence on the 8 precepts before we make any such move. Mirai dismissed, linking his fingers in front of him as he stared back into his ward's eyes. But that girl. Eerie Mirio's optimism was hard to put a dent in. So seeing his more vulnerable, emotional side was a rare sight. It's unfortunate that she might be under such treatment. I don't enjoy the thought of her being in the care of those monsters either, but this is reality. But we cannot act prematurely. The less prepared we are, the more likely we are to have casualties among our ranks. That's something I wish to avoid. But Sir Mirio. To be the hero we need, you must learn to act with patience and critical thinking. Mirai put a finger to his temple, eyes narrowing as he spoke. Acting with emotion can be a weapon, but also a detriment. And in an operation this big, it is to our detriment. Mirio winced at his words, silent but clearly not happy as he lowered his head. I understand. He muttered in answer, slowly turning around and taking his leave. Mirai kept his posture stiff and professional, waiting for his ward to close the door behind him. Once the tumbler clicked, his shoulders sank a bit and his head lowered. I need time, Mirio, time to try and alter the vision I've seen. The man known as Sir Night Eye possessed the quirk of foresight. The ability to see into one's future and as far into it as he wished. And the future that awaited his agency, his heroes and his friends was littered in death. His own and Mirio's. Mirio's head continued to hang as he stood outside Sir Night Eye's office, his lips pressed together and his fist balled in frustration. Are we really so powerless? Did he shoot you down again? Mirio's gaze trailed up to the woman at the reception desk close by. She had dirty blonde hair and was his elder by a couple years. She wore a dark blue headband and long-sleeved shirt under a lavender dress, her eyes brimming with sympathy as she looked at him. Ah, sorry to ignore you, Chihaya-san. Mirio quickly straightened up his posture and put on a smile, swinging his arm around, as if he were in his typical mood. Unfortunately it seems so, but it's not a big deal. Come on, Tagada. You don't have to put a strong face on. It's clear you feel a certain way about it. Her kind smile made his shoulders slump, his own lips falling into a frown. You can vent to me if you like. I don't want to burden you with something like that, Chihaya-san. Mirio walked over to her desk, sparing a glance back at Sir Night Eye's office door. You know I believe in his wisdom. Sir is brilliant but sometimes smart people make hard choices we don't like. Chihaya frowned in sympathy, her eyes drifting to the table. Tarot cards sat in front of her, a sigh escaping her mouth. And we do what we can with what we know. Mirio looked to the side, a silent question going unasked. It was over half a year ago that Chihaya came to join their agency. The former country bumpkin who had nearly been manipulated by some sketchy religious group. But as fate would have it, she would meet Sir Night-Eye. He helped her avoid these men like the plague and made her a secretary at the agency so that her power might not be abused by such groups. The power to predict the future. A power not unlike Sir Night-Eye, yet one that did not stem from a quirk. Most don't believe this fact, but Night-Eye and Mirio have seen several times that it was indeed not from any sort of quirk. But for the sake of normality, it was hammered into Chihaya that it was best to say it was. He wanted to ask you see our success in your cards. But had long since been told not to do so. Not of Night-Eye and not of Chihaya. And in most cases, it was an easy task. But right now, as his patience was tested, he could feel the words on the edge of his tongue. But he held back, trying to keep himself in check. Don't ask something you don't want the answer to, Mirio reminded himself. If Night-Eye was taking so much time to prepare, he must have seen something that required all of the time they could afford. At the cost of Erie's well-being no matter what logical thinking came to mind, her scared face and the desperate anger of that old man, both were seared into his memory. I'm gonna go on patrol. Mirio mumbled, heading for the door. I'll see you later, Chihaya-san, see you, Tagata the dirty blonde frowned, watching him helplessly. Once his cape was no longer in sight, Chihaya turned to her cards. Her eyes darted back and forth, making sure the coast was clear and Sir Night-Eye's office door was shut. Okay, cards please, show me something good Chihaya called to whatever divine powers had graced, or cursed, her with her foresight. She shuffled the deck in front of her and quickly dealt the cards. As she opened her eyes, she set the deck down again. With a deep breath, she slowly drew the top card. Death she frowned, a pit forming in her stomach. No change why. She could feel herself nearly cry, quickly shaking her head. It hasn't changed for you either, has it? Chihaya jumped, realizing Night-Eye was standing at his door. She wasn't sure when he got there, but puffed her cheeks out. I hate it when you sneak out like that. I was planning to ask you about your own prediction. If anything had changed. Night-Eye ignored her complaint, walking over to her desk and seeing the card dealt. I see neither of our visions have. Chihaya looked down, her expression solemn. No. It's still the same path. I see. Night-Eye muttered, a tense silence following. I want to give Mirio what he asks. But not at the cost of his life or the lives of others. I need more time. Do you really think that will change your fates? Chihaya asked, her voice absolutely sapped of energy. Our predictions have both been terrifyingly accurate up to this point. I don't know if I haven't given up. Night-Eye declared, his expression unreadable as he looked at her. Chihaya looked into his eyes, seeing his determination. It clearly was wavering, but it had not completely faltered. I'll do as much as I possibly can to change it. Mirio might not understand now, but one day he will. Alright. Chihaya muttered, looking at the card of death. She wanted to crumple it in her hand. She wanted to save the people that saved her. But taking it out on the cards would do her no good. She folded it back into the deck, looking up at Night-Eye. I'll do what I can to help, even if it's not a lot. I look forward to it. Night-Eye turned away from her desk, moving to return to his office. Sir. Sir, we have an emergency. Chihaya and Night-Eye drew their gazes up, a blue-skinned woman wearing a diving mask and undercut costume running through the office. Bubble girl. What is it? Night-Eye cocked a brow in wonder, the young female hero taking a moment to catch her breath. I was out on my patrol near the Precept's base and unfortunately out with it. Why you better take a look for yourself sir. Bubble girl fished into her pants pocket, producing a card. Sir blinked, slowly taking it and examining the back. A small red design of a hat and mask decorated the back. The Phantom Thieves. He muttered, quickly flipping it around. His eyes became owlish as he read the contents. Impossible, their target is Sasaki, what? Chihaya stood up from her seat, unable to unhear their conversation. Where did you get this? Night-Eye asked, sweat trailing down his brow. It was littered on the street side, one of the direct paths to the compounds. We tried to clean it up as much as possible, but plenty of people have already seen it. Damn it. Of all the targets for the Phantom Thieves to take, Night-Eye pushed his glasses up. He had to make a rather brash decision now. Not only were the 8 precepts their target for investigation, they were also incredibly dangerous. The Phantom Thieves of Heart couldn't possibly understand what hell they would be walking into. If we don't act soon, those vigilantes, whoever they are, will be killed. That wasn't the only concern, either. If Sasaki and his men felt their compound was compromised, they could potentially flee and be lost to the wind. leaving them with no arrests or evidence of wrongdoing. And with no way to save Eri either. Mirio would never forgive himself. "I'm going to see a judge tomorrow," Night Eye declared, looking at Bubble Girl. "Call Fatim's agency. Let them know we'll have to expedite our plans." "Sir?" Bubble Girl's eyes nearly popped out of her head. "We no longer have time on our side. Tell them that we're having an emergency meeting in the afternoon. I'm going to the judge's office in the morning. They're most assuredly gone for the day now." Night Eye checked his watch, cursing the poor timing of this. "We'll have to launch our raid as soon as possible." "Night Eye, you can't." Dahaya's voice was desperate, eyes shaking as she stared at him. "What we've seen, we don't have the luxury to worry about that anymore," Night Eye admitted. "If we act too late I see more blood in our future than either of us feared." "Good to see you, Night Eye." The bespectacled hero stared up at the rotund mass that stood before him. Fatim, a fellow hero in charge of his own agency, greeted him with a big cartoonish grin from the top of his round body. "Thank you for coming on such short notice." Night Eye shook his hand, motioning down the hall. "We'll begin the meeting shortly." "Has Rox arrived?" "Not yet. Apparently had some family issues to take care of since the meeting was last second." Fatim shook his head, hand fishing into a bag of chips he carried in his free hand. "He should be here soon. Hope you don't mind a small delay in the meeting." "No, it's completely fine. I still have some members in the field that should be returning soon. I only arrived myself from the courthouse." Night Eye declared. "Bubble Girl and Chihaya-san will be bringing the briefing soon." Night Eye. Sir turned around, seeing said secretary running to him almost desperately. "We need to talk." "It'll have to wait until after, Chihaya. You should really see this. It's important." Chihaya shook her head, eyes burning with excitement and anxiety. Night Eye cocked a brow, wanting to dismiss her, but feeling compelled to listen. He took the papers from her hand, glad she did not disregard her duty, and handed them to Fatim. "Would you mind passing this briefing out to the others? I'll join you shortly." "No problem. See you in there." Fatim gave Chihaya a wave. Also, "Hi Chihaya." "Hi Toyomitsu-san." She greeted back, quickly but friendly. "Chihaya, right, come on," she said, grabbing his arm and dragging Night Eye behind her. He wasn't expecting this kind of push from her, but allowed her to drag him forward. They soon arrived at her desk, the clairvoyant letting his arm go. Look. Night Eye walked over to her desk and saw her cards laid out across it. But it wasn't the death card that was drawn this time. It was the Fool. "What?" Night Eye's gaze drifted to Chihaya, a smile now plastered across her face. "My prediction, it changed. I don't know how, but it changed. Tomorrow, when you go to raid the 8 Precepts base, it won't end like we've been seeing." Chihaya shook his arm, tears nearly shedding at the edge of her eyes. "I'm positive it's changed. Look into your own future. Tell me I'm wrong." Night Eye stared at the cards in awe. He wanted to believe them, but he couldn't be sure. So he did as she said and peered into the future. Into the events of tomorrow. And what did he see? "They will surrender to us and hand over Eri," he muttered, his hand shaking slightly as he adjusted his glasses. "The future, it's changed. So it's not just me. That's incredible. I've never been wrong before, but I am. We both are." Chihaya looked up at Night Eye, swallowing a lump in her throat. "How?" Night Eye could only think of one thing that had changed the future entirely. The one third party that had thrown a wrench into everything. The Phantom Thieves. "Hey, you damn heroes can't get in. We have a warrant, surrender peacefully or be detained." As expected, a fight had broken out at the front gate. Fatim and his agency led the way, breaking through the first barriers of men without issue. The soldiers of the 8 Precepts were clearly unprepared, nor were they receiving any sort of guidance. Night Eye and his men kept a wary eye out, but none of the 8 bullets had made an appearance. POWER. Leading the charge was none other than Lemillion, Mirio moving with purpose and ferocity. Several physically morphed gangsters attempted to assault him, swinging large, meaty arms his way. But their attacks passed through him as if he were a mirage, his arm cocked back and slamming into one's gut before whirling a kick into the other's face. Once both crumpled to the ground from the strikes, he sank into the ground, leaving no trace of himself behind. Where the hell is he? Where a fist rocketed up from the ground and swung into the jaw of another Yakuza, sending him tumbling on his back. Mirio's body soon followed after his arm, grinning as he regarded the number of Yakuza standing between him and his goal. MAAN Mirio's on a rampage. A young woman hovered by, adorning a skin-tight hero suit and using curled tendrils to hover above with her quirk. She blasted another Yakuza with wind as he approached, almost absent-mindedly dealing with their enemies. "I thought he was feeling down. He's been waiting for this chance for a while," a quieter voice echoed out from beneath the hood of another teenage hero. A crab claw restrained another punk against the ground, his tired eyes trailing to Mirio's back as he took down another thug. Good to see him in better spirits. "Come on, Sun Eater. You should be rushing in alongside him." You too, Najire-chan. A hand slapped against the hooded young man's back, Fatgum soon rushing past him. He grabbed whatever offenders were knocked down and swallowed them into the rot-un body of his, their heads poking out like they were buried in the dirt. Lemillion. Don't get too far ahead. Sir Night Eye called out, walking through the entrance now that most of the rank-and-file Yakuza were out of the way. Mirai's voice trailed off when he saw Mirio now stock still at the entrance. You, Mirio muttered. The number of heroes gathered around to see what caused his halt. Mirai Sasaki felt his eyes bulge when he realized it was their main target. Kai Chisaki. Several of his underbosses stood at his side, though notably half were gone. Chisaki, you should have left this to us. Nemoto pleaded, motioning to the elevator. You need to make your escape. Chisaki. Hand over Eri right now and surrender. Mirio demanded, his fist balling in front of him as he prepared to charge forward. Sun Eater and Najire quickly moved to his sides, both preparing their quirks to battle his underlings. He's not here to fight, Mirai declared, moving in front of them and meeting Chisaki's gaze. Am I right? Young master, please. You have to, Nemoto pleaded, only for Chisaki to put a hand on his shoulder. Thank you for your help until now, Chisaki muttered before walking forward, his men looking at him in wonder as he stood out in front of Mirai. He slowly lifted his hands up high, his head sinking low. I surrender. And I order my men to do the same. Chisaki. His men cried out, helpless to stop him as he got on his knees. Don't let him use his quirk. It could be a trick. Fatgum ordered, several cops and heroes rushing past to secure him. Nemoto and his men looked around in panic, at first looking ready to resist. I said we surrender. Chisaki's words bit into the bullets, each of them becoming still. They looked at Chisaki as he remained on the ground, his eyes peering back at them. Slowly, starting with Nemoto, the bullets began to surrender, getting on their knees and mimicking his pose, hands up and on their knees. What is this? Mirio asked, eyes narrowed as sweat trailed down his cheek. It's what you asked for. Chisaki declared, his head sinking back down. Eri's in her room several floors down. Where are the rest of your bullets? Mirai asked, walking forward before the others while officers started to cuff him and his men. Gone, they likely knew it was over. Hisaki admitted, his hands now cuffed behind his back. We've done so much wrong, so many terrible things, and for what? Mirio and Mirai's eyes widened, watching as tears started to stream down his face. Even to my old man and to Eri, so this is what people are referring to. Mirio's eyes trailed to Night Eye, the tactician pushing his glasses up. The battle was won long before we arrived. His heart has been changed. Mirai stood outside of Chisaki's cell, currently being held at a holding cell in the center of Tokyo. His cell was reinforced with steel walls, and his hands were locked in an advanced set of cuffs, covering them completely and rendering him unable to touch anything with his quirk. Not that he's capable of anything in his condition. It'll be a bit before we can get a statement. Detective Tsukauchi informed him, the pea-coated man scribbling something onto a clipboard. Until he's able to properly give a confession, we'll have to wait. Is this similar to the previous change of hearts? Mirai inquired, eyes drifting to the detective. Not exactly. The others went public with their confessions. But statements taken from multiple sources do say that Kamoshida and Madaram were unwell for some time before they made full-blown confessions. Tsukauchi sighed, eyes drifting back up to Chisaki. He was shaking like a leaf, curled up as he muttered quietly to himself. It's possible that they were in the same state leading up to their confessions. I see. Mirai answered. Then it's the waiting game. Pretty much. We'll try and get more out of his men, but they seem more liable to keep their mouths shut. Tsukauchi grit his teeth in frustration. To think, the Phantom Thieves would beat us to the punch on this. Knowing you, you must be furious. Night Eye didn't answer that statement, eyes remaining plastered to Chisaki's prone body. I'm sorry, old man Eri, he whimpered from his cell, clearly a shell of the man he once was. Even without a confession, we have more than enough to put Chisaki and his men away with what we gathered from the compound. Tsukauchi continued, breaking the silence between them. Trigger, the quirk erasing bullets and the condition of that girl, Eri. I spoke to Recovery Girl earlier. She was in worse shape than we imagined. Night Eye's hands twitched for a brief moment as he felt guilt creep. We think her body was the secret key to the quirk erasing bullets. And he had to use his deconstruction quirk to extract it for this use. I see. Tsukauchi visibly paled, a silent understanding passing between them. Eri had suffered more than they dared imagine. And Mirai had to go on knowing that he had pushed for their raid to launch much later. Ring, his thoughts pulled away from his guilt, Mirai digging into his pocket and answering his phone. Mirio. Did you need something? A couple things, but first, has Hisaki talked yet? Not yet. He's in no state to answer questions. We'll have to wait and see how long before he gives his confession like the others did. I see. Still, at least we have him. But the reason I really called was about Eri-chan. Mirio's voice was hesitant, but Night Eye patiently waited to hear his request. She's a bit more responsive now, but she's still not receiving us well. Mirai sighed, massaging the bridge of his nose. I see. Well, so long as Eraserhead can keep her quirk in check for now, that's the best we can do. I suppose, but there was one thing that came up. Something that got her attention. And what was that? I know we have a policy of not bringing civilians into such work, but the boy and elderly gentleman from before. I asked her if there was some way she'd talk to us and she said she wants to see them. Night Eye cocked a brow in wonder, eyes shifting to Tsukauchi. I see, I'll make the necessary requests. You said this old man you met knew me, correct? And he owns a coffee shop. Yeah. He kicked me out of it. I'm sorry for not getting his name, I see. It's alright. I think I have an idea of who you're referring to. Mirai held his chin in thought. That might make it easier to set up a meeting, if true. Izuku swallowed the lump that formed in his throat as he walked behind Sojiro. It had been a day since the news broke out that the Night Eye Agency had cracked down on the 8 precepts. And to his disbelief, Sojiro had gotten a direct call from Sir Night Eye soon after. There was some clear disdain in the way he addressed the agency head as well as familiarity. Despite this, Sojiro agreed to come into his office after being asked. Both of them had been asked for. I have to keep my head. Izuku told himself, knowing that he was walking into the lion's den. There shouldn't have been anything to link them to the Phantom Thieves or Chisaki. Well, except for that one meeting. Could that be enough to have him be under suspicion? It wouldn't surprise him if it was. But he still had several advantages on his side that helped him play innocent. Alright, listen kid. You need to be silent and let me do the talking. Sojiro looked back at Izuku, surprising him. I'm not sure why they're calling us here, but I don't like it. Especially right after that bust. I understand, but Izuku raised a brow. Why did you agree to come if so, Sakura-san? Why do you think, kid? Sojiro frowned, turning back forward. I want to know how Irie's doing. Of course Izuku smiled. Sojiro had offered to let him stay as well. But he had been urged to go and learn more. They both had. It wasn't long until they reached the end of the office, passing by several scrambling pro-heroes. Izuku didn't fail to notice how busy they were, though he couldn't determine whether it was because of the previous bust or if this was a normal day at the office for hero agencies. Ah, you must be Sojiro. Izuku and Sojiro's eyes trailed to a desk sitting right outside of the office door. A blonde woman putting her hands together as she stood up and ushered them to the door. He's expecting you both. Please go right in. Thank you, young lady. Sojiro shot her his usual smooth smile before facing the door, lips immediately falling into a frown. Izuku fought the tension in his chest, lips thinning into a line. Sojiro opened the door and led them in. Trepidation and caution should have ruled more over Izuku. But as he saw the walls and posters plastered around him, he felt his guard crumble a little. He blinked, the large face of All Might staring back at them from the back wall. He looked around and found another poster, again All Might. Limited edition prints that he had desired before but couldn't get his hands on. I knew he was All Might's sidekick, but he's also a mega fan like me. It's been some time, former Commissioner Sakura. Izuku had to snap back to reality, his caution settling back in. Sir Night Eye was waiting for them behind his desk, standing with his hands held behind his back. Just Sakura works, Sasaki. I haven't been part of the commission for some time. Sojiro huffed, his hands stuffed in his pockets as he stood with ill-concealed contempt. Of course. Night Eye's glare trailed to Izuku. His gaze was piercing, as if assessing a potential threat. So this is your ward. He's a kid I'm looking after at the moment. Sojiro answered shortly. I'm Izuku Midoriya. It's nice to meet you. Izuku gave his curt response, bowing in greeting. Good to meet you. Night Eye watched him like a hawk, and it took every bit in Izuku not to buckle under his gaze. Are you going to tell me why you called us here or keep staring at the kid? Sojiro cut in, his arms crossed over his chest. Yes, I'm sure you've heard about the raid on the 8 precepts by now. Night Eye peeled his gaze away from Izuku to look at Sojiro again. I heard it went off without a hitch. Barely any fighting, really. Sojiro nodded, his foot tapping impatiently. What about it? That peaceful conclusion is what's in question. Right now we're trying to get details as to the reason behind such. After all, Chisaki had been considered a large threat for some time. You were still around when he was, were you not? I was. I know exactly how dangerous he was and is. Me and the kid were reminded not too long ago. Sojiro's fingers dug into the fabric of his sleeve. Any idea why he surrendered so easily? Typically it'd be classified, but word is soon to break out. After all, these were found scattered near the compound not long before the raid. Night Eye reached into his suit jacket and produced something Izuku immediately recognized. Their calling card. Sojiro couldn't stop a single laugh from escaping his lips, a smirk crawling at the edge. I'll be damned, so a third party kicked all this off. Indeed. Far ahead of my intended timeline. Night Eye placed the calling card on the table, his eyes now leering between them. But what I'm trying to determine is how they came to this target. And why now of all times. The 8 precepts weren't unknown. They could have heard about them easily enough in the street. Sojiro scoffed. Perhaps. But the 8 precepts' latest movements have been well disguised for some time. Very few leaks as, after all, any man who would risk speaking would have been dealt with by them. But then we have the incident with you both. Night Eye's words and intense gaze made sweat perspiration from Izuku's skin. Is this an accusation? Sojiro scoffed, unperturbed by his words. That me and the kid are phantom thieves. No. But it is quite the coincidence that only a few weeks after such an incident where you and Chisaki came into direct contact that he would become a target for the phantom thieves. Don't you think? Chisaki countered, hands crossing behind his back again. Sounds like they picked up some slack your office was letting drag. Sojiro dismissed, eyes narrowing behind his glasses. You should be happy that they acted. I am. More than you realize. Izuku and Sojiro blinked, his voice as unreadable as it was before. But that's not the topic we're discussing. Regardless of my feelings, I'm trying to determine how Chisaki became a target for the phantom thieves. And the only link we have right now is you two. Look, I don't know what you're fishing for here, but I told them. Sojiro snapped his head to Izuku and Night Eye glared right into his eyes. Izuku had been preparing for this. He had been over it several times with his friends. That if the topic of how the phantom thieves came to find out, there was one easy solution. Izuku, I posted Chisaki's name on the fan site. I asked them to make Chisaki their target because I wanted to save Eri-chan. Izuku looked guiltily at Sojiro. I didn't want to wait for the heroes I couldn't stand waiting. So I put in a request. This was a last-minute tactic Makoto had suggested to Izuku should such questions arise. It was a little daring but made a lot of sense. The phantom thieves had been getting a decent name as of late. It was an easy excuse with a good amount of plausible deniability. Sojiro stared in disbelief, silent. Izuku swallowed the new lump that formed before looking at Night Eye. Despite his stone-cold visage, he could see something in his eyes. A shade of remorse and possibly understanding. His lips were no longer so tight. I see Night Eye straighten out, adjusting his glasses. I've seen the fan site. It's nothing more than a children's forum. There's no way to confirm whether or not that request is what sparked their attention regardless. What? Sojiro blinked, raising a brow as he turned back to the pro hero. It's a dead lead. We'll have to explore other avenues of pursuing the phantom thieves. Izuku shared a glance with Sojiro, the underlying message getting through, but confusing them both. I think it best to leave it at that. You should have no other contact with the authorities in this case. So long as this information never leaves this room. Are we clear? But we're clear. Sojiro slapped Isaacus's shoulder, gripping it. Izuku's lips tightened as his guardian eyed him carefully. Izuku quickly got the message to shut up and accept it. Yeah. Good. Night Eye adjusted his glasses and nodded. But that out of the way, let's move on to the reason I actually called you here. He pressed the speaker function on his office phone. Chihaya, send them in. The door opened behind them, Sojiro and Izuku first being greeted by the sight of Mirio. He wore a guilty smile as he scratched his head, but stepped aside. Izuku felt his breath hitch and his eyes threatened to leak with tears. Standing so close at hand was Eri, the meek young girl staring at them with bright orbs. Eri, Izuku and Sojiro mumbled, turning fully. The young girl burst forth, running at them with little hesitation in her step. Izuku and Sojiro fell to their knees and smiled, quickly taking her in their arms. She hugged Izuku first, giving him a tight hug around the neck. Izuku pursed his lips, his mind flashing back to the palace. It felt the same as back then, when he held her shadow so close. But to hold the true Eri here in the real world, it brought the tears streaming down. Thank you, she whispered into his ear, and he couldn't help but blink. Does she know? He didn't have much time to question it as she broke the hug from him, now hugging Sojiro around the neck. The old barista laughed, returning the hug as he fought the tears that threatened in his eyes. She's had a lot of trouble speaking to anyone. She said. Mirio's voice brought their eyes to him, his head hanging low. She said she only wanted to see you guys. Only you two. Sojiro stood up, still holding Eri in his arms to look at Mirio. His lips thinned but he looked somewhat more sympathetic. I see. I'm guessing it's thanks to you that Sasaki brought us in. Yes, I've wanted to say it for some time, but I'm sorry. Mirio bowed low, his hands tight to his side. My actions were save it, kid, you did what you had to. Izuku looked at Sojiro, his expression softening. We couldn't have done anything. We probably would have died if not for you. Sojiro rubbed Eri's back before putting her down, the little girl looking up at them silently. And we got to see her again, so thanks for letting us see her. Sakura-san. Izuku looked at his guardian with respect. He turned back to Mirio and bowed as well. The same goes for me. I'm sorry we spoke so harshly. No. It was a valuable moment for me. Izuku and Sojiro looked at the young man in wonder. Mirio no longer looked discouraged, determined even. Even if there was a limit to what I could do, I could have done better. And I'll strive to be better. And I'll value the training UA still has to offer me. He looked at Sojiro and smiled. So don't worry, I will be going back to school. Sojiro was guffawed, his jaw slacking a bit before letting out a chuckle. You really know how to bounce back, kid. I'll keep an eye out for you when you become a true pro hero. Please do. Mirio bowed again. And make sure you keep taking good care of Eri here, got it? Sojiro knelt down in front of the girl, smiling at her. Speaking of, what's the plan for her going forward? She'll be under my care. Izuku and Sojiro drew their gaze up as a foreign voice echoed in the room. A tired-looking man with a mob of black hair on his head, all black clothing and some strange bandages around his neck entered the room. Aizawa. Sojiro stood up, hand resting on Eri's head. Didn't peg you for the adoptive type. You know him, Sakura-san. Izuku looked at the man as a small sense of familiarity struck him. You wouldn't know him by his look, but he's a pro hero named Eraserhead. Sojiro put a hand on his hip. I remember hearing about him. He's an underground hero who doesn't do interviews or get any sort of spotlight. Izuku recited the ingrained text of heroes in his mind, causing the surrounding adults and Eri to stare at him oddly. Sorry, you're pretty well informed, kid. But yeah, I'm taking care of her due to her quirk. Aizawa turned his tired eyes back to Sojiro. I've been outside for a bit, but I wanted to see how Eri reacted to you and the kid first. She hasn't been too receptive of anyone else. She's been through a lot. Sojiro rubbed the top of her head. She has. But seeing that she's opening up to you both, we have a request. Sojiro and Izuku raised a brow. At least until Eri's comfortable enough, would it be possible to arrange for you to see her sometime? We can work out an accommodating schedule if need be. We can see Eri-chan again, Izuku asked excitedly. You can. Eri grabbed the pants of Sojiro, looking up at him hopefully. So long as Sakura-san approves. Sorry to pressure you like this, but we want to make her as comfortable as possible. Aizawa explained, rubbing the back of his neck. So no. Izuku and Eri blinked, looking up at Sojiro in shock. You think I want to come to this stuffy office to see Eri-chan? Not really a great environment for a kid, instead, bring her by my cafe. Sojiro looked back down at Eri and smiled. I need to give her a taste of the best curry she'll ever have. Curry? Eri's eyes lit up, clearly hungry as a bit of drool dripped down her lip. Yes, I have been meaning to visit LeBlanc, that's what it's called, right? Aizawa asked, letting out a half-hearted chuckle. We can make some arrangements for that. Good. You look like you could use all the coffee in the world anyways. Sojiro chuckled. But I am still wondering how you landed the job of taking care of her. It's out of necessity. Aizawa answered, looking down at Eri. Her quirk needs to be managed, and I can at least help get it under control when the need arises. Thankfully we've had no incidents. Eraserhead has been a great help since the raid took place. Mirio gave a thumbs up and smiled. And your help to get her adjusted to things will be greatly appreciated as well, Sakura-san. Said Aizawa. I see I'm still not pleased with how you handled the Chisaki situation, but Sojiro looked down at Eri and knelt down in front of her. At least you're taking steps to make it right. I'll do what I can. Can I count on you as well, kid? Sojiro asked, looking at Izuku. Of course, Sakura-san. Izuku grinned. Damn, so they didn't really push it. Izuku had quickly called together a small meetup with the others once he had returned back home with Sojiro, meeting at LeBlanc once Sojiro headed home. There was clear tension among his friends about the topic of discussion, but he was quickly able to reassure them once he explained what happened. Not really. Sir Night-Eye seemed ready to let it go. I thought they might ask more questions about the fan site, but nothing. Izuku explained. Weird. Figured they'd be pissed off that we pulled one under their nose. Bakugo's eyes narrowed, his voice suspicious. They all seemed really remorseful about what happened before. Izuku looked down. I feel a little guilty for putting so much on Tagada-san. Sakura-san was right to forgive him, so I did the same. He seems to want to improve as a hero too. And Eri was okay? Anne asked hopefully, Izuku's bright smile spreading again. Yeah, she was. She's being taken care of by a hero because of her quirk's instability, but she was really happy to see us. She looked like she did in the palace. He had to wipe his eyes, afraid he'd cry again. I'm so happy to hear that. So what was the arrangement they worked out with boss? Makoto asked curiously. She's going to pay us a visit now and then. She seems to open up more to us, so Eraserhead is going to be bringing her off and on. Eraserhead. Bakugo's eyes widened when he heard the name. He's looking after her? You know him? Ryuji asked. He's my teacher at UA. Huh. The group looked at him in wonder, the dirty blonde shrugging. It's normal for heroes to teach there, you know. Still, it's weird that he's looking after the girl. His quirk can suppress hers, so that's why they have him looking after hers. Apparently it can get a little out of control, Izuku explained, earning a grunt from Bakugo. Makes sense. Still, I'll have to look out for him whenever we're having a meeting. Don't need him getting on my case. Still, all things considered, I'd say that's a job well done. Morgana's feline smile spread on his face. We stopped Chisaki's operation, saved Eri, and now he's captured. All in a day's work for the Phantom Thieves. You say that, but I do see one problem in all this. Yusuke supplied, his eyes narrowed in concern. While all of our accomplishments this past palace have yielded are great for us personally, we have one problem. The police now possess Chisaki, meaning we won't have any confession to show for it. The thieves looked around at one another for a moment before his words fully sank in. Ah, damn it, he's right. That means ain't no one gonna know we did that. Ryuji slapped the top of his head. Well, we did have the calling cards we spread around the street block, right? Anne suggested hopefully. The heroes cleaned it up rather hastily afterwards. Only a few people saw it. It had the effect we wanted, but it wasn't nearly as widespread as the last couple calling cards. Makoto admitted, a frown forming on her face. I thought you idiots weren't doing this for fame. Bakugo scoffed, looking around. We're not. But we're still trying to spread our names out there. To spread the message of the Phantom Thieves to more people and give courage to the unseen. Remember? Morgana retorted. Well, not all of our jobs are going to get so publicly seen. Izuku shrugged, the others looking at him to see his mood shining through as he continued to smile. I'm just happy with all of our good work. Next time we'll spread our names even more. Right. Everyone could tell he was far too pleased with the day's events to be brought down by such news. They all sighed, smiling along with him. Yeah, I guess it's not TCH. Stop settling for mediocrity. Bakugo snapped, making Izuku recoil. You're not gonna make a damn splash like you want in society acting like that. Pathetic. So harsh. Oh, relax. Like he said, we'll get more eyes next time. Makoto rolled her eyes. Whatever. Bakugo hopped out of his chair, his hand fishing into his pockets. At least we got this crap done. I don't need you idiots bothering me for the next week anyways. What do you got going on that's so important? Anne scoffed, looking at him with half-lidded eyes. The UA Sports Festival is coming up. Everyone's eyes lit up in realization. I've gotta train before then. We did plenty till now, but now I gotta work on my own. Oh shit, that is pretty soon. Ryuji looked at Bakugo with a wry grin. Hey, maybe you should hook us up with some tickets. We did need to do your party after all. I don't think Bakugo would hear. The thieves blinked when a stack of tickets were dropped on the counter. Their jaws dropped in awe, Ryuji quickly snatching them up. Don't ask me for shit now. Holy shit, these are actually. Ryuji looked through the tickets in hand, looking at the others. We can actually go see the UA festival live. No way. I thought only heroes and students could attend. Anne's jaw dropped, running over and leaning on Ryuji's shoulder. Parents can technically attend, but most can't make it. Bakugo shrugged. Aizawa-sensei said it wasn't a big deal, so he got me some. That was really cool of you. Kaken. Izuku smiled at Bakugo, grateful. TCH, whatever. I'm just making sure my welcome party is more memorable than any of yours. Bakugo grinned wickedly before stomping out. I better not see you idiots sell those. Be there to watch me win or I'll kill you. The thieves watched Bakugo as he left, the steward bell ringing as he closed the door behind him. He really is hard to read sometimes. Ryuji laughed, looking at the others. But whatever. I let him have this win. Most people don't ever get a chance to see the UA festival live. Is the festival really that big of a deal? Morgana tilted his head in wonder. I remember it outshined Kamoshida's whole Olympic medal, but no, it's as big if not bigger than all that. Izuku exclaimed, his eyes shining. It's an event celebrated by all of Japan. Watching the potential young stars of the next generation in action. A lot of top heroes attended live too. I'm so excited. Izuku rambled a bit, his fists in front of his chest as he trembled with excitement. Even if these were nosebleed seats, they're way valuable. Ryuji declared, grinning in anticipation. I suppose that does make our celebration plans much easier. It's a little over a week from now, correct? Yes. Hence why Baku-chan's going to be focused on training for a bit. Makoto explained. He's going to be under the spotlight at one of the biggest stages of his life. It'll be a valuable opportunity as many agencies will be scouting students to take for internships. I see. I'm quite familiar with such pressure. Many aspiring artists hope to be noticed by art agencies as well. I'm sure the pressure on him will be quite high. Yusuke nodded. Then it truly is best that we show our support of him as a team. Yeah, I guess you're right. Still, he'd hate hearing that. Ryuji chuckled. With that, everyone grabbed their ticket and started to take their leave, Izuku waving them out. Once they were gone, he took a deep breath and smiled at Morgana. It's been a really good day. It has. So much came together quite neatly. Still, the cherry on top would have been a public confession by Chisaki. Morgana said with a slight bit of disappointment in his voice. But maybe let's not look a gift horse in the mouth. Right. We'll have another opportunity for it, I'm sure. And you're sure it was the result of a change of heart? Indeed, sir. There's no doubt about it. Both the heroes and our own detectives have determined it to be so. A balding older gentleman answered, his voice low. He was at least in his 60s and wore a plain blue suit. His office overlooked the bright lights of Tokyo, the man standing by his window. He was the head of the Special Investigations Unit, one that Sei Najima was affiliated with. Damn. Everything Chisaki was working on is being tossed down the drain. Were any of the bullets recoverable? They were, but I'm afraid the Night Eye Agency has seized all contraband. I can get my agents to try and claim some for evidence, but it wouldn't be enough for anything grand. Unless it was the full erasure that he had promised, it's useless then. Forget it. As you wish, sir. What about Chisaki? The SU director asked, eyes narrowed. There are a lot of eyes on him, and not all my men. Best to leave him be for now. I don't need any unwanted attention being drawn trying to take care of a liability. Besides, he has no direct link or knowledge of who we were. We had full men for that in place. I figured you would. Alright, then I'll keep you updated on Wait. Has he given his direct confession? One like those we've seen from the past victims of the Phantom Thieves of Heart? No sir, he has yet to do so. He's been in a poor state since his arrest. The heroes and detectives are waiting to see when he'll be able to talk like the others. The SU director explained, stroking his chin. Why do you ask? When his confession is given, make sure it's recorded. Not just on tape, I want video too. I have an idea for how to turn this to our advantage. Chapter 43. As things wound down from the weekend, Izuku was looking forward to a bit of time off. Going to see some friends, build some stronger relations with his confidants, and perhaps relax a bit. Come on now, Midoriya-kun. Just a bit more. Of course, relaxing wasn't exactly on the schedule when it came to hanging out with Kasumi. When she texted him about working on their calisthenics, he honestly felt a minor urge to tell her maybe another day. That moment passed quickly as guilt took over for possibly dodging her after they hadn't spent time together in so long. And now here he was in a Nakashira Park, tracksuit on and sweat beating down his face. He was no stranger to basic calisthenic exercises, especially stuff like pull-ups and crunches. But Kasumi was on another level. It didn't help that when he told her he did basics like those that her eyes lit up and started listing some advanced workouts instead. Currently Izuku was doing swinging pull-ups, going from one bar to the next. While his time in the cognitive world made this much easier than it would be months ago, he was still getting a good sweat going. One more. Izuku swung to the bar in front of him and performed one last pull-up before letting himself fall to the ground, taking a bated breath as he hunched over on his knees. Great job, Midoriya-kun. Kasumi clapped her hands together, smiling as she used her forearm to wipe some sweat off her head. I can definitely tell you've got some good flexibility. Thanks still, it could be better. Izuku breathed out, pushing off his knees to stand straight. Well, we'll get you there. Your muscles almost have it, that fine-tuning of synergy between them. Kasumi pumped her fist in excitement. Once your internal and external oblique muscles reach harmony, these workouts will be a light warm-up. A light warm-up, is that what they are for you? Izuku blurted in shock, earning a giggle from Kasumi. They're great for getting me loose and ready for my coach's workouts. She has me working 10 times harder. Kasumi explained. Your coach really pushes you, huh? Izuku let out a breathless laugh before smiling. Still, I appreciate you taking the time to do this, even though you've got your own workouts to worry about. Oh, not at all, Midoriya-kun. It's my pleasure. Kasumi smiled brightly, enough to make a dash of red to dust Izuku's cheeks. Besides, I needed to talk anyway. Now that we're done, do you think you have time to listen? Izuku could hear her disheartened tone, frowning. Of course, Yashizawa-chan. It's part of our deal. Kasumi smiled, waving for him to follow. They soon reached a nearby park bench and had a seat, Kasumi breathing out to dispel some nervous energy. So, the truth is I haven't been doing great lately with my gymnastics. Really? But you've still performed so well from what I have seen. Izuku said, admittedly confused as she shook her head. It's still not up to snuff. I keep training hard, but I don't get any better. I'm honestly in a slump, Kasumi continued, eyes drifting to the side. I went to my coach about it, but she told me to take some time off. Take time to figure out who I really am. She doesn't want me to quit, just slow down, I guess. I see. Izuku wasn't sure what else to say to that, lips thinning into a line. I wish I could offer something helpful, Yashizawa-chan, but slumps are difficult to overcome. I've hit a few, I know. And I wouldn't expect you to have the answer, don't worry. Kasumi reassured him, offering a small smile. but being able to talk about it with someone it's nice. And it does make me feel better. That's why, even if it's not gymnastics, I was hoping you'd still go out with me sometime. Go out? Izuku felt his face heat up when he heard that, but quickly shook the thought off as his brain processed her actual meaning. Why yes, of course. I'm happy to help and talk like we have. Thank you, Midoriya-kun. Kasumi smiled, her eyes drifting to the water. My coach used to praise me for my boldness. I was fearless and ready to try anything. But since starting high school, it's been downhill. Why is that? Well, for one I got taller. So my flexibility started to lessen. Then I started second-guessing myself a lot more. I fell into depression the more I realized that I wasn't as capable, as brave as I was before. Yoshizawa-chan. Izuku's voice became soft, unsure what to say. Despite her venting, she looked at Izuku with hope in her eyes. But then you helped me at the tracks. Even when you were uncomfortable, you were still brave and stood up for me. Yoshizawa exclaimed, looking at him with mirth. I admired that so much. I wanted to be brave like that again, and I knew you were the person who could help me most. I think the more we work together, the more I'm sure my confidence will come back. Izuku's jaw slacked a bit, touched to hear she viewed him in such a light. It motivated him to return the favor, offering a confident smile. I don't know how much I can do, but I'll do my best to help you get it back then. That'd be great, Midoriya-kun. Thank you. She said with another dazzling smile. You're so odd though. I didn't think you'd accept just like that. She finished with a giggle, immediately making Izuku blush and stutter. Still, he could feel that they had gotten closer with his heart to heart. Smash Faith confidant. Rank 2 well, we should get going. Hope you're rested enough now. Kasumi stood up, smiling at Izuku. Yeah, I'm good to go. Izuku hopped to his feet only to suddenly get noodle legs. Kasumi quickly caught him. Whoa there. Don't rush it too much if you're still not ready. Izuku blushed as her hands grabbed his arms to help him steady. I'm okay. Izuku blurted out as his face reddened. He mentally smacked himself, realizing that even after getting closer with Anne and Makoto, he was still a mess around girls. Don't be afraid to let me help a bit, Midoriya-kun. Kasumi giggled, thankfully unfazed by his outburst. Izuku took a moment to steady himself and slowly walk forward, nodding his head. Alright, I'm ready now. Okay. We'll take it slow. Kasumi walked at his side, Izuku now steadier on his feet. Oh, right. I had a question for you. And maybe this will sound silly, but I have to ask for my friend. What is it? Izuku asked, looking at her in confusion. Would you happen to have one of those calling cards I think they were called? Izuku's eyes widened at the request. You know, those ones from way back at the beginning of the year when that Kamoshida guy was targeted by the Phantom Thieves. Oh, that Izuku thought for a second she might have found something out, but quickly realized she was looking for a souvenir. I'm not sure. I'll look around though and see if I had one. It wouldn't be hard to replicate the calling card they made for Kamoshida. It lacked the flair of the current ones that Yusuke gave them now anyways. Oh, I'd really appreciate it, Midoriya-kun. I really want to surprise my friend with it. I don't care for the thieves myself, but he's kind of a fan. She smiled, though her words did stir a small bit of defensiveness in Izuku. Ah, I see he recalled her saying such a thing the first time they met. It had been almost a throwaway statement, but it had still bothered him. Both then and now. So why don't you like the Phantom Thieves? Kasumi looked at Izuku as she registered his question, putting a finger to her chin. Well, I just think that maybe they're going a bit far, you know. After all, we do have heroes for such things. Shouldn't handling villains like that be left to them? Izuku used to agree with her line of thinking. He couldn't blame her for such a mindset. But his newfound experience had changed that perspective. Maybe, but there's a lot of things the heroes don't see. Things hidden from them. Kasumi frowned in surprise, looking at Izuku curiously. That sounds like an experience. Did something happen to you, Midoriya-kun? Izuku looked at her, Kasumi's eyes worried but intent to hear him. I had friends that were more personally involved in the Kamoshida incident. They dealt with a lot of issues and silenced Kamoshida's influence in the school made sure of that. The staff and the police that should have helped them turned a blind eye, and it wasn't until the Phantom Thieves changed his heart that people were finally free of his oppression. Midoriya-kun, Kasumi muttered, guilt coloring her voice. I'm sorry, it's okay, Yoshizawa-chan. Izuku shook his head, offering a small smile in reassurance. I would have felt the same way had I not seen it up close. I love heroes. I admire and look up to so many, especially All Might. But they can't see everything. Kasumi lowered her head in thought, not saying anything as they continued to walk. Always bringing a weird haul, Kid Izuku let out a sheepish laugh as he scratched the back of his head awkwardly. He had once again made sure to collect the scraps and trinkets collected from the palace and bring them to Iwai again. He could always see the lingering question in the ex-Yakuza's eye, but the words never came out. Something Izuku was eternally grateful for. Still, this bag o' junk goes for good money. You're lucky I know how to get rid of this stuff. IY pulled out a stack of yen and put it on the table. Here. That should about cover it all. Thank you, IY-san. Izuku smiled, looking over the amount. It certainly was a lot more yen than one would expect. But if IY was willing to part with so much, then Izuku had no doubt his connection was ready and willing to buy every little piece. You gonna be coming in sometime soon for work? IY asked after putting the bag away behind the counter. Could use some help soon. Sure. Will it be another work night or a regular one? Izuku asked, feeling odd about his phrasing. IY chuckled but hummed. Maybe there's been some big things happening lately. And I'd wager life's about to get a little annoying soon. IY grunted. What happened? Izuku blinked, though after saying it he soon realized what he was referring to. There's been a big shake-up in the underworld. A certain Yakuza group that was keeping things real quiet suddenly fell apart. I'm sure you saw it in the news. IY pointed out, crossing his arms. You asked about him a while back, the 8 precepts funny coincidence, huh? Yeah, I did see that. Izuku nodded, hoping his tone wasn't too suspicious. IY eyed him a bit as if checking his reaction before continuing. Well, if a punk like you suddenly heard about him, then maybe the 8 precepts were getting careless. Probably got a little too greedy and finally brought the heat from the heroes on him. IY guessed, his index finger tapping his forearm. So what does that mean for you? Izuku asked carefully. Not sure yet. I broke ties with my clan a long time ago, but with what just happened, a lot of families that weren't caught up in the raid are gonna be vying for power. Of course, it'll be a bit of time before anyone starts. Gotta let things blow over. But once they do I have a feeling I might be seeing certain people soon. Will you be okay? Izuku asked, unable to hide his concern. IY gave him a small look, his eyes barely concealing a mite of his worry. But he quickly hid it away with a chuckle. We'll see soon enough I suppose. For now, we bang. Izuku and IY jumped, the door to the shop suddenly swinging open with a loud crash. Izuku blinked as a foot hung in the air for a moment. An armored foot. Why Omyun-san? Did you think I'd forgotten about you? Oh, brother. Izuku looked up at IY, only to see him tugging on the brim of his cap over his eyes, a frown forming on his lips. Haven't you heard? Yakuza are being locked up right now. Izuku's eyes shot wide open as he saw who walked through the door. A short but muscular woman with dark skin and white hair. Replacing human ears were long white rabbit ears. She wore white and purple spandex and purple stockings that barely contained her large toned legs. RRR rabbit hero Mirko. Izuku found himself stuttering as the woman walked in, his eyes sparkling in awe. Huh? You a customer for this guy? Mirko raised a brow at Izuku as he scrambled for his bag, looking for something she could sign. He's an employee. And mind not kicking my door like that. IY huffed, eyes narrowed at Mirko. You taking in employees now? That's new. Mirko laughed, a cocky toothy grin on her face as she focused back on IY. You getting too old to do your own work, Myun-san. We all get old, Mirko. But I'm not too old to take lip from you. IY moved out from behind the counter and moved Izuku to the side. Suddenly Izuku felt the tension in the room override his awe, eyes popping out of his head as IY suddenly squared up with Mirko. Stand back, mumbles. Wait, IY-san, you really shouldn't. Izuku's voice trailed off as he watched them, suddenly feeling like he was witnessing a western cowboy standoff. Mirko was significantly smaller than IY, but Izuku knew that meant nothing. Her kicks could smash through metal and concrete like cardboard. And IY somehow was her target. Ho, striding up to me now huh? Find your guts behind that counter. I don't need a rowdy runt like you wrecking the place. How did IY-san get involved with someone like Mirko? This could be bad. Izuku really felt powerless here, backing away as he felt their clashing wills become palpable. They both stood silent for a long moment, building up to the moment when one would lash out. Izuku became increasingly worried and bit his bottom lip anxiously. And finally Mirko made her move, throwing a lightning-quick roundhouse kick at his neck. Izuku flinched away and closed his eyes, worried that when he'd next look up, IY was gonna be a crater in the store. But when he cracked open an eye, he suddenly felt awe take over again as he saw IY still standing somehow, his forearm raised and blocking the kick. You put a little too much into that one, don't you think? IY huffed in annoyance, eyes narrowed. Gotta make sure you're not getting too rusty, now. Looks like you're just fine though. Mirko laughed, slowly lowering her leg. Her cocky smile shifted a bit to a more friendly one, placing her hands on her hips. Considering it's been a while, I thought we were due a checkup. You're such a pain. IY sighed, but much to Izuku's shock, he had a smirk on his face. Just when I was enjoying some time not seeing your mug around here, you come and break the dry spell. Yeah right. You'd be bored out of your mind if I stopped coming by. Mirko laughed before looking at Izuku and giving him a small wave. Sorry about the disturbance, kid. Just checking in with this old lizard. I'd appreciate it if you would wait till after I close up shop so you don't wreck the place. IY crossed his arms. Yeah. I'll be more careful next time. Send the bill for the door to my agency like usual. Mirko waved it off casually. Like usual, how often does this happen? How have I not seen her here before? Still, I am a little shocked you picked up an employee. Didn't Kaharu want to work here? Izuku blinked, a little shocked just how much she seemed to know about IY. I told you I don't want him coming around here. He's got enough to worry about in school. And you better not be sneaking around my back and telling him stuff too. IY gave her a suspicious look, but she simply crossed her hands behind her head and rolled her eyes. I said I wouldn't, didn't I? Even if the kid does deserve to know more. Just can't. That's between me and him. He sighed again, putting his hands in his pockets. So you paying for dinner then? What? But we didn't even fight. Mirko narrowed her eyes. You gotta earn that. I feel like I have, with the door and you doing this in front of the kid. IY jerked a thumb back at Izuku, the green-haired teen waving his arms frantically at being mentioned. TCH fine. I guess I can pay this time. But I expect more than a little scuffle next time. Mirko turned around, walking toward the door. I'm gonna go finish my patrol then get changed. Hurry up and close up shop already. With that, Mirko walked out, Izuku watching as she leapt high into the air and out of sight. Izuku stared at the door for a long time as he processed everything that happened before he looked at IY, his words coming out garbled. That was you and what? Yeah, I guess I owe an explanation for that one. IY grunted, walking over to the door and closing it, giving it a small inspection. So, a little over 8 years ago, I was still dealing with some residual fallout from my Yakuza days. While most of us had been scattered to the wind, some of my old clan members were pretty resentful. Resentful? Izuku parroted, brow raising. Yeah. Some of them were looking for someone to blame when things fell apart, so when I ran into them on the street, they decided to pick me. IY sighed, crossing his arms and leaning back against the counter. Tried picking a fight with me in broad daylight, 7-1. But then Rolls and Little Rabbit, he chuckled, a smirk forming. She was kicking him around before they had time to register who she was. But then of course she sees me and assumes that I was one of them. She did. Izuku's jaw dropped, but then giving it a second thought, as well as a quick look at IY, the shock left his face. Ah, yeah. Can't say I didn't particularly get why. But regardless, it turned into a fight with them to a fight with me. It was pretty close and we ended up trading blows. But eventually one of the nearby witnesses finally spoke up and talked her down. You would think that would be the end of it, but instead, she ends up following me home one day. Why would she do that? Izuku tilted his head, not getting it. Her excuse was that she was keeping an eye on someone who was clearly trouble. But really it's because before we stopped fighting, I landed the last blow. She at least admitted it a bit later. IY chuckled as he looked up at the roof, seemingly nostalgic. You don't seem particularly bothered by it. Izuku pointed out, earning a laugh from IY. Yeah, well guess I got used to seeing her around. She comes by now and then for a spar. I can't always accommodate her, but she's surprisingly reasonable for someone so aggressive. She's met Kaoru and well she's kin to his hero now. Not the greatest role model, but she's always been good to him. He chuckled, shaking his head. Besides, she's still a million times better role model than a former Yakuza. It sounds like you care a lot about her, IY-san. Izuku pointed out, a small smile on his face. And his words seemed to snap IY back to reality, a somewhat flustered frown forming on his lips as he grabbed the brim of his hat and pulled it down over his eyes. Care is a strong word, but I at least don't hate her. It's complicated, so don't worry about it. Izuku could hear the affection in his voice. As odd as their relationship seemed to be, IY obviously rolled with it well. He didn't press the issue and just smiled, feeling as if he'd seen a new side to IY that day. Smash Hangman Confidant. Rank 4. Thank you again, my lovely fans. This has been another great day for the Pop Step Live CONCERT. Izuku sighed in relief as the show ended without incident, the fans cheering and preparing to leave the scene. No police had made an appearance thankfully, and the barricades they had set up had been respected. All that was left now was to clean up a hem. Izuku looked over at Koichi, the college student clearing his throat rather obviously. Pop Step looked at him in wonder before seeing his eyes shoot back and forth between her and Izuku. Pop Step met Izuku's eyes, and it seemed to hit them both at once. Their deal. Pop Step let out a quiet groan before clearing her throat and going back into idle mode. Before you lovely fans go, I've got a special message to share with you ALL. The crowd stopped and looked back to the makeshift stage. At the request of a special fan, it's come to my attention that there's more than a few vigilantes out in the world. So I want to make this special shout out to the Phantom Thieves of HEART. Be sure to support them out there and send them your troubles. Just don't let them steal your hearts from me, okay? There were cheers and murmurs from the crowd, the reception to her words quite vocal and appreciative. Izuku smiled upon seeing their cheers and praise, feeling a bit more proud of his team's work and the support that was actually out there for them. Maybe I should invite everyone to one of Pop Step's concerts. Izuku thought, thinking they might enjoy seeing people cheer like this for them as well as her music. It didn't take him and Koichi long to pack things up and get going. Just in time as the police started to show up once things were already done, they quickly reconvened in one of the alleys nearby, Pop Step dropping from above with a fun bounce. Ah, what a great show. Plenty of people, no incidents. We need more like those ones. She said with a giddy grin, hands on her hips. Good job boys as usual. I hope we get more like those ones too. A lot less trouble to deal with. Koichi agreed before looking at Izuku. I'd say your location pick and block spots were spot on. Good job, team organizer. I don't think my work did too much today. It was just a good concert. Izuku smiled a bit bashfully, rubbing the back of his neck. He looked at Pop Step with appreciation. But your announcement for the Phantom Thieves was great. I appreciate you saying that. Seeing how much support they got was really cool. Well, I did promise I would, so long as they're not stealing my limelight, I don't mind too much. Pop Step gave a kinder smile than she had before. Besides I know I've made things a bit difficult up till now. So being able to return the favor does feel nice. Thanks again for how much you've helped. Izuku felt the appreciation behind her words, offering a kind smile in return. Smash Devil Confidant. Rank 2 let's head back before we get caught up in the crowds. Koichi suggested, the two nodding and following him back to his apartment. It wasn't far off, thankfully, from their concert location. Once back, they were met with the grizzled and drinking Knuckledister, the older vigilante sitting on the ground with a can of beer in hand. Yo. The old man greeted, eyes focused on a paper in hand. Hey master. It's been a bit since you've popped in. Koichi greeted kindly. Yet again coming after the concert's done. Pop Step complained, moving to the curtain she had set up to change. Good day sir. Izuku greeted with a bow, grabbing his bag and stuff that he had left here while they worked. I'll be heading out, okay. Oh yeah, be safe on your way back, Midoriya-kun. Koichi smiled. So, master. They got more info about who took the Yakuza gang down. Izuku stopped for a moment, curious to see what the old man's answer was. I got it confirmed from a few people. The cops might be taking credit, but it's who most people suspect that made it possible. The Phantom Thieves. Knuckledister seemed rather casual in saying so, almost as if it was yesterday's news. Phantom Thieves strike again. You must be happy to hear about that, Pop Step chuckled as she spared a look at Izuku who let out a sheepish chuckle and smile. Still, surprised that it hasn't hit the news yet. Cops really cover it up that well. Well, from what I understand is that he hasn't confessed yet and the cops scooped him up before he could do so. Knuckledister shrugged, turning a page over in his paper. Was smart on their part. Last thing the cops want is a public confession of a crime boss that's been eluding them to go public and make him look worse. How do people know it was the Phantom Thieves, though? Koichi asked curiously. The cops might have cleaned the street up quick, but a few of them were picked up ahead of time. The old man fished into one of his pockets and placed a familiar calling card on the table. Whoa, calling card. Koichi's eyes were shining as he looked down at it. Can I have it? Go nuts. Yes. Koichi picked it up, looking it over. Wow, it's real professional looking too. Whoever drew this up must be an amazing artist. He certainly is. Izuku quietly chuckled to himself. Oh, right. Midoriya-kun's the real Phantom Thief fan here. Koichi slapped a hand to his face, frowning. Do you want it? Izuku quickly shook his head, smiling. It's okay, really. You can have it. I have a couple from their past jobs. Really? Sweet. Wait, do you have any extras of those? Koichi asked, eyes bulging. Okay, that's enough about the Phantom Thieves. I'm sure Midoriya's got a train to catch. Pop Step sighed, stepping out from behind the curtain in a hoodie. Alright. I gotta go. Izuku waved to them one last time. I'll see you guys later. Thank you so much for coming today, Midoriya-kun. You don't know how important it is that we do some testing today. Izuku swallowed the lump in his throat as Hatsume's eager grin stared back at him. Happy to help, Hatsume-san, he said, mentally preparing for what was likely to be a painful day. Well, it wasn't something he looked forward to, he couldn't deny that Mei's inventions had been quite helpful to him and his team up to this point. He wanted to repay her how he could. Even if it meant quite a bit of soreness in the days to come. Today we won't be testing anything new, it'll be a rerun through all of my previous projects. Izuku was mildly surprised to hear that, Mei typically having a gaggle of new equipment at the ready. Next week is the sports festival, and I need to make sure that any equipment I take in is ready to go. Oh, right. You're participating in the festival. Izuku's eyes sparkled with interest upon hearing that. That's right. It's important that everything is perfect, too. Hatsune placed a familiar pack on the bench next to them, tinkering with several buttons on the back. The sports festival is the perfect place to show off my babies to the world. There'll be companies, sponsors and agencies watching. I've got to make sure I put on a good show for them. Izuku knew the importance of gaining sponsor attention for UA students was important to their futures. It meant job opportunities and a secured future for many of them. Though he had only really looked at it from a potential young hero's point of view. It made sense that this was a big opportunity for someone like Mei. I see. Then I'll do my best to make sure it's all ready to go. Izuku said, excited to provide what help he could knowing the importance of their testing for today. That's great. Because we're going to put multiple items to the test at once. Izuku felt sweat trail down his face as Mei slapped the pack onto his back, her crosshair eyes glistening with opportunity. I have to be able to use these items on the fly Midoriya-kun, so that means being ready to use each one back to back. Mei grinned, standing in front of him with her pearly whites showing. Today's testing will be a combination of testing input lag as well as estimating proper reaction speed needed to activate the next baby. Mei placed a pair of her hover boots on the ground for him, motioning to them. So be sure to use each of them in quick succession of one another, alright. Gee, got it, that was terrific data, Midoriya-kun. That'll be it for today. Izuku slouched over, hands on his knees as he caught his breath. Well, it might have been a workout, a panic-inducing one, the tests had gone relatively well. Mei had worked out many of the previous kinks to her tech that had caused him some pretty painful moments before, and aside from a couple of slow inputs that caused a small crash, he was getting too used to this, things were relatively painless. Yeah, happy to help, Izuku breathed out, raising his head and offering a shaking smile. I feel a bit guilty as I don't have anything to offer you today, Midoriya-kun, but I'll be sure to make a baby for you next time that'll blow you away. Mei said as she began to pack her things up. It's okay. I know you're focused on the sports festival. Izuku nodded in understanding before offering a kind smile. I'll be cheering for you. Mei stopped packing for a moment, looking back at him silently. Her energy was gone from her gaze as if genuinely surprised by his words. Izuku wasn't sure what that look had been, even as her cheeks dusted a bit red. Thank you, Midoriya-kun. It's been nice having your help. A wide smile spread across her lips, her affection shining through this time. It's nice having someone in my corner. Izuku returned the smile, though he did linger on her words a bit. I'm sure you have more than just me, I have a few friends and Power Loader Sensei who support me, but most leave me to my devices. Mei turned back to her equipment, calibrating the pack once again. My parents let me do as I please, but it wasn't so much as support and moreso to keep me from bothering them. Izuku frowned, but remained silent. Mei said such a thing rather casually, but her lips had straightened into a line as she spoke. I wanted to show my babies off to them and hope they would like them. But Mei shook her head, sweat trickling down her cheek as she awkwardly scratched her cheek with her index. I'm sorry, Midoriya-kun. I went and brought things down. And no, it's okay, Izuku waved his hands, not wanting to make her feel unable to talk. I don't mind, really. Thank you. Mei slowly smiled again, turning to the pack and picking it up. Anyways, all that was to say that I definitely value our work together. You've been a wonderful guinea pig and I hope you know that. There goes that term again. Izuku thought to himself but let out a chuckle. He could feel her genuine kindness in saying so, even if she didn't mince her words too much. Smash Fortune Confidant. Rank 5, it feels like it's been a dog's age since we kinda did this, huh? Anne grinned at Izuku as they walked through Inohashira Park. Yeah, it has been. Sorry that we haven't had time to hang out lately, Anne-senpai. Izuku smiled back at her, the two soon arriving at their familiar spot to relax. Aw, look at the little duckies. They must be a family. Anne said pointing to the lake, seeing a mother duck leading her ducklings around. Gosh, it's just such a nice day out. I could stay here for a while, it is nice. We finally get to relax a bit now that the palace is handled. Izuku sighed in relief, taking a seat on the wood railing and hunching over. No kidding. Plus, it's nice to get away from all that hustle and bustle of Shibuya, you know. Though it's honestly not even that far from here. Anne giggled, taking a seat next to him. Honestly, this place still kinda confuses me. It's so congested half the time with people, stores and buildings. But we still have a nice park like this nearby. It's almost a little scary to think about. Really? I guess I hadn't thought of it like that. Izuku admitted. It wasn't that different where I lived. Though it's definitely a lot busier. Oh right, you're new to Tokyo too. I almost forgot. Anne crossed a leg over the other, looking at him inquisitively. So not that different, huh? Are you already pretty adjusted then? For the most part. It does feel odd to take the train as much as I have lately, though. Izuku admitted, laughing a bit sheepishly. He had to do a lot of public transit for his rather large number of confidants. That's good. It took me a good while to get used to things after moving to Tokyo, to be honest. Even though most people seem adjusted to all sorts of different looks nowadays, apparently being a foreigner still throws kids off. Anne admitted, pursing her lips as she thought about it. It does feel odd that you have to deal with that kind of thing nowadays, though. Izuku thought back to his own experiences in elementary and middle school, sighing. I can relate. Really? Oh, right. Anne's eyes shot wide in realization. Was it because you were quirkless? Yup. Most other kids were really mean about it. I guess if it's not one thing, people will find another reason to be cruel. Izuku sighed before shaking his head. Sorry. I didn't mean to bring down the mood. Oh, no, you're perfectly fine. In fact, that makes me feel a bit closer to you if I'm honest. Anne smiled, surprising Izuku. You probably had to deal with a lot more than I did, if I'm honest. I was mostly just left alone or kind of treated like a unicorn. I guess that just continues the trend of us being the odd ones out, right? Anne's giggle was infectious, Izuku's cheeks turning red as he shared her mirth. Yeah, I suppose it does. Thankfully I had Shiho to make things easier on me. She was the first person to approach me without that same look most people kept giving me. Anne sat up, eyes nostalgic. The first time we met, it was during art class. We had shared the class for a while and of course we all had some projects to work on. I made a piece for the class and you know what she said. Wow, Takamaki. That piece really sucks. Izuku was completely taken off guard. Right, it was so mean. Anne laughed and smiled. But that's how we started talking. And from then on, we were best friends. I see. I'm glad she reached out to you, Anne-senpai. She's a great friend. Izuku said, hoping that things were still the same for them lately. She is. We're back to talking like we used to finally, though there's still. Anne shook her head. Oh, darn it. That's not why we're here. I actually had some really cool news to share. Izuku had to recoil a bit when Anne drew a bit closer, face heating up. What is it? Oh, sorry. Got a little excited. Anne giggled, backing up and grinning. So, you know how I've been modeling quite a bit on the side, right? Well, I actually just recently got a call from a really big agency. I thought you might be interested quite a bit in Hue. Really? Izuku asked, not really familiar with any models. However, did a celebrity hero agency call you? That's right. And not just any agency, I got it from Uwabami's agency. Anne grinned, happy to see Izuku's eyes sparkling in awe. No way, Snake Hero Uwabami wants you to model for her. That's amazing. Izuku had at some point drawn out his hero notebook, flipping through its pages. She's a surprisingly hot figure when it comes to heroes having side jobs and being in the spotlight. This is a big deal. I thought you'd like that. I'm pretty excited myself. Anne smiled, pumping her fist. It'll be the second pro-hero I'll get to meet, and this time a celebrity. I can't wait. Plus I'll get to rub it in Ryuji's face after, so don't tell him. I'm really happy for you, Anne-senpai. That's a big opportunity. Thanks. But that's not the only thing I wanted to say. Would you like to come with? Izuku's jaw slacked, eyes sparkling. Are you sure? Yeah. They said I can bring a friend as long as you don't interrupt the set. Knowing you, we'll be just fine. Anne giggled. Honestly, I'd offer to bring Ryuji too, but I feel like he would get in the way. Izuku laughed sheepishly, not able to completely deny the accusation. I'd be honored to go. When is it? It'll actually be right after the sports festival. The agent said they're waiting to see some of the students from UA as well before calling us together for some work. Anne explained. I see. Yes, I'm definitely up to go. Izuku nodded, looking forward to the chance of meeting a pro hero. Awesome. Honestly, I'm happy to have you come. I'm pretty nervous about it, so it'll be easier to know I'm not alone there. Anne admitted, a kind smile spreading across her lips. You're a good friend, Izuku. And I think you really help me feel more courageous at times. Izuku blinked, cheeks going a bit red upon hearing that and having a hard time responding. Thanks, senpai. You do the same for me though. I do? Anne tilted her head, Izuku giving a small smile as he nodded. Yeah. Your confidence always makes me feel better. Makes me want to be more open at times. Easier said than done though, right? He laughed shyly, scratching his cheek. Wow, thanks Izuku. That makes me feel good to know too. Anne giggled with a bit of shyness as well. We'll keep supporting each other for confidence and courage then. Yeah. Izuku and Anne soon bumped fists, Izuku glad to have spent this time getting closer with Anne again. Smash Lover's confidant. Rank 4 weight. Izuku felt like he had just been slapped by a thought. What? Anne recoiled, shocked by his outburst. I totally forgot to tell you. I met Rabbit Hero Mirko a few days ago. Anne's jaw slacked in shock. You did and you didn't tell me. I'm so jealous. How did you meet her? Was she fighting a villain? And no. She was actually fighting a friend. Huh, it's a little complicated, well still, I'm jealous. Did you get an autograph at least? And no, I was so caught up in what happened, I completely forgot. Izuku slouched over, clearly disappointed in himself for the mistake. Darn it, well if your friend meets her again, you've gotta let me know. I want her autograph more than anything. Anne said, putting her hands together. Damn, my stamina's pretty shit now. Ryuji huffed, hunched over on his knees. Really? You seem to hold up in the palace as well, Izuku mentioned, taking a moment to catch his breath. The two had met up at a gym in Shibuya, Ryuji wanting to give them another place to work out now that they'd lost his spot at the school. Yeah, but most of the time, we have long bits of rest in between fights. Gives me plenty of chances to catch my breath. Ryuji explained, straightening up. When it comes to my quirk, I gotta have better stamina. It makes it way easier to keep my speed up for longer. Still got a while to go before I get to where I was. I see. How long could you maintain your speed for? Izuku asked, genuinely curious about the difference. Up to 4 or 5 seconds I think. Might not seem like much, but you've seen what I can do with just 1 or 2 seconds. No, that's incredible. At the speed you can go, maintaining that speed is an achievement. Izuku's eyes dazzled as he thought of the possibilities. Heh, thanks. I guess it was pretty impressive. Ryuji grinned bashfully, only to quickly drop it. But still, I'm a long way off from where I was. Even with the knee brace your friend gave me, it still doesn't help me maintain it like I used to. Sad to say, it's a stamina problem. Sakamoto. Izuku and Ryuji turned to see someone approach, a relatively normal-looking young man, likely a year or 2 older than them. Akita-senpai. Wow, it's been a while. Ryuji greeted him, stuffing his hands in his pockets before looking over at Izuku. Hey, this is my former senior from the track team last year, Akita-senpai. Ah, I'm Izuku Midoriya. The friend of Ryuji-senpai's. Izuku bowed politely. Taking in a junior to look after? I'll be damned. Akita chuckled, smiling at Ryuji. Good to see that you seem to be doing better now. I was afraid you might not be too popular after last year. Oh. Right, about that senpai, I'm real sorry how things turned out. Ryuji frowned in apology, Izuku soon realizing he had been there for what Kamoshida had done. Ah, you've got nothing to apologize for, Sakamoto. In fact, I should be apologizing to you. Ryuji and Izuku's brow raised, Akita lowering his head. I failed you guys by keeping quiet the way I did. You deserved better than what Kamoshida did to us. And no, you got nothing to apologize for. You were doing it because Kamoshida was gonna give you a college rec, right? Meh, having thought about it, I doubt he was ever going to actually do that. He was just using it to keep me and the other seniors in line. In the end, he just avoided anything like that by making you take the fall for the track team. Still Ryuji could see his point, something Izuku was glad someone else was able to say, but seemed hesitant to fully accept it. Seriously, you shouldn't have to be holding that burden. It wasn't your fault. If anything, I should be thanking you for that. I'm actually attending a really good university for track still, even with what happened last year. Akita tried to reassure him. Besides, I heard the track team is getting reinstated. So all's well that ends well, right? Huh? Izuku and Ryuji blinked, sharing a look together. For hello, you haven't heard. I don't even go to Shujin and I heard about it. Akita said, genuinely surprised. I heard Yamauchi's the one trying to get it done. Wait, Yamauchi? That Yamauchi, who's that? Izuku asked, confused. Yamauchi was Kamoshida's assistant coach to us at the time. Akita explained first. Basically his lapdog. Ryuji clicked his tongue. Yup, the very one. Still, he volunteered to help get it going again. Since Kamoshida confessed to all the crap he did to us, I think the school's probably more than happy to let it get going again. I see. Ryuji still sounded reserved. I know the others might have a tough time letting go, but you should see if you can talk to the others about it. No reason for you guys to keep bad blood, right? Well, that's up to them, I guess. Izuku frowned, knowing full well that was a very unlikely possibility. I hope you guys can work it out. And if you see them, tell them I say hi. It was good to see you, Sakamoto, and I hope you guys work things out. Akita gave a small nod of his head to them both before taking his leave. Yamauchi, huh? Ryuji almost spat at the name. Was he that bad? Izuku asked, raising a brow. He was basically a mini Kamoshida. He just couldn't get away with shit like Kamoshida did, so he'd be a real kiss ass in front of the parents and then be a complete ass when it was just him. Ryuji explained, crossing his arms. I'm real happy for Nakoka and them, really, but Yamauchi, if he's anything like Kamoshida, I can see why you're concerned. Izuku nodded, brow furrowing in concern. Exactly. I can't stand the idea of him being the advisor to it, that dick. He doesn't even teach PE. Ryuji kicked the ground with his heel in frustration. I'm gonna do some research. Hear what's going on with that jerk and the rest of the track team. I don't trust that he's not up to something. Okay. Let me know if you hear anything. We can take care of it together. Izuku said, brow furrowed. Thanks man. Always know I can count on you to help me out. Ryuji grinned, bumping his knuckles into Izuku's shoulder. Izuku nodded, happy to have Ryuji's full trust and to return it when needed. Smash Chariot Confidant. Rank 5. Damn, I'm tired. Still, Haluva workout. Glad we went for a bit longer too. Ryuji stretched his arms above his head as he and Izuku walked through Shibuya now, heading home. You two must have been working hard because I can smell you both. Morgana chuckled, having rejoined them soon after their workout. It was pretty hot inside the gym, so we definitely worked up an extra bit of sweat. Izuku chuckled, rubbing the back of his neck. Well then the first thing on the agenda when we get back to Yonjin is to hit the public bath. I think Izuku's got that handled on his own, cat. Ryuji rolled his eyes. Before Morgana and him could fall into their typical back and forth, several of the jumbo screens above echoed with the familiar news jingle. Breaking news. We're coming to you with a leaked video released to our media outlet by an anonymous source. A couple weeks ago, one of the last bastions of the nearly extinct Yakuza groups, the 8 Precepts of Death, were cracked down on by the Night Eye Agency. The three came to a sudden stop, looking up at the monitors with curious eyes. But as this leaked video will reveal, it seems that the downfall of the 8 Precepts may have been brought about by a third party. Play the tape. Izuku, Ryuji and Morgana felt their eyes nearly pop out of their heads when they saw Chisaki on the screen, a police officer standing behind him and Sir Night Eye across the table from him. No effin' way, Ryuji mumbled, sharing a glance with Izuku. You're finally ready to confess. Yes, I need to confess for the terrible things I did. Chisaki's voice sounded drained of will and energy, his bare face and sorrowful eyes, a far cry from the heartless monster they fought in the palace weeks back. I did horrible things to that girl Eri. All in the name of a false future. The pipe dream for criminals. I tortured and twisted her body to suit my needs. Izuku and Ryuji heard their phones going off, quickly drawing them out to see that the group chat was being blown up by everyone. Anne. Are you guys seeing the news right now? Makoto. Someone leaked his confession. Who? How? Yusuke. Am I missing something? What confession? Bakugo. What the fuck? I killed countless men in the name of keeping ourselves veiled in shadow, and only now do I realize what a monster I was. I thought this world was sick, but it was me. I was the one who was sick. Sick of losing. Of being a nobody. Of seeing my old man be considered a nobody. So much so I put him into a coma. So I'd have no one to stop me from putting his own granddaughter through my experiments. I have to beg his forgiveness. I'll be begging for it until the day I die. Chisaki crumbled onto the interview table in the last moments of his confession, the feed cutting back to the news anchor. That was Kai Chisaki, former 8 Precepts clan leader of the now defunct Yakuza clan. His confession is very reminiscent of the confessions of both the disgraced gold medalist Suguro Kamoshida and the plagiarizer Ichiro Isai Madaram. Both confessions were the results of a change of heart by the infamous Phantom Thieves of Heart. If that wasn't enough, the video was sent in with what appears to be a calling card, one addressed to Kai Chisaki. No way the heroes took credit for stopping them from the Phantom Thieves. Are we really letting these vigilantes run amok like this? It's embarrassing. Even the heroes are getting their job done for them. What a joke. Izuku looked around at the suddenly amassed crowd of people, many gawking at the news and what was shown. He felt a swirl of emotions well up inside him, conflicted by what he saw and what he was hearing. The Phantom Thieves of Heart could no longer be ignored. Not by the public nor the heroes that might oppose them. To be continued. This is the end of the video. If you enjoyed the story, then hit the like button and comment your favorite part, but for now see you all in the next video.